see. Together we pray and lurk and play in happy harmony. We have a faith to share with others everywhere. A message of love from God.
The recording has stopped.
The world we hear. Adventist youth, Adventist youth, Adventist youth. Okay, please to enjoy the program as we watch what they're doing in, I don't know if we'll be able to partake in it. So let us see what's happening over with the Pure Reality team. Kenneth, it's over to you. Can you put us on, please?
Garth.
Well, welcome each and every one of you, and thank you so much for having me on this panel. I am the least of these. I count myself to be the least of these when I look at all these heavyweights on this panel here this afternoon. And so I am just honored to be here with each and every one of you to be able to share a bit of the experience of being a part of the church and in the community. And that I'm an advocate for our community, and I speak as a person who is a leader in the church. And not only of Tabernacle, but recently I've been in the West Coast, pastored in the West Coast in Canada, so I bring a well-rounded, I think, type of ministry that has seen a lot of the cross-cultural, multicultural, different nationality and multi-ethnic type of belief. And so coming here to Miami is certainly a new experience, but one in which I embrace and looking forward to being able to connect with each and every one of you to be able to strengthen our community together.
Thank you. Next, we'll introduce Deputy Chief Timothy Belcher from Lauderhill Police Department. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is a great forum. And I know we have these across the nation, in and out of churches or other businesses and organizations as far as putting on panels of this nature. But I grew up in Miami-Dade County, graduated from Northwestern Senior High School in 1986. I was able to go to college in West Virginia, where I graduated with my undergraduate degree, and then I came out and started my police career in 1992 at North Miami Police Department, where I did 27 years there. I had the opportunity now and been blessed to be given a position as Deputy Chief at Lauderhill Police Department, where I started in 2020 of April, so I'm here just shy over a year now, and really enjoying myself. I really learned a lot and really trying to blend into that community now to start making a difference like we did in North Miami and also across Dade County. So we're just looking to blend and partner up with the agencies and the organizations in Broward County to start making a difference also, and also build a relationship within our police department to have a good relationship with the community and vice versa with the community, with the police officers also. So thank you again for having me here. I really enjoy this because I do this so many times and stuff, and sometimes you pause a lot, you know, when you're talking on the go and on the run. A lot of times I speak to a lot of young people, being part of the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project, and just guiding them and directing them to go in the right direction. And we do the same thing in Lauderhill also, where we go out to the parks, go up to the convenience stores where people are hanging out, and we're trying to break bread with those individuals, people who don't believe in the police or who don't have a great relationship with the police. And I try to go in and try to change that mindset of our people as far as who hang in those places and stuff, and also get the officers to understand that just by getting out, waving, speaking, having brief conversation with individuals and stuff will make a whole difference, a big difference in our communities and stuff with the relationship between the police and the youth.
Thank you, thank you. Next, we have State Representative, House District 117, Kevin Chambliss, coming all the way from down south.
Greetings, everyone, and happy Juneteenth to you. Again, my name is State Representative Kevin Chambliss, and happily made the trip from the Homestead, Florida City area, where I serve as a state representative for House District 117. Definitely, I'm glad to be in the building at the panel with these distinguished ladies and gentlemen to talk about this most important topic of the hour. I want to thank Brother Eric Pettis for inviting me to this conversation, someone who I've known back from my work in the NAACP in the community for many, many years. I myself am a country boy from Mississippi. Grew up, born and raised Mississippi, went to Jackson State University, did a little grad work, fell in love with politics, got involved with political campaigns. Worked for Congressman Joe Garcia. He won, became Miss South Dade director, and then I worked for every congressperson in Deep South Dade ever since. Congressman Carlos Cabello, Congresswoman Donna Shalala, and Congresswoman Debbie Merkel-Powell. So professionally, I have a staffing background in government, but also the community activist background, which gave me a very, I think, unique perspective at potentially how to go about and solve problems. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because I know that we're not just going to talk about the issues, we're going to talk about the solutions as well. And again, thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. Next up, we have State Representative District 108, Ms. Dottie Joseph.
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir. Buenas noches. I am State Representative Dottie Joseph, and I proudly represent Florida House District 108. Like the Deputy Chief on the end there, I'm homegrown. I'm a daughter of this community. I was actually born in Haiti and left when I was 3, but I still claim it. Can I do that? Is that all right? All right, I still claim it. I went to public schools all throughout in Liberty City, Little Haiti Design District. Like, this is home turf for me. Studied hard. Had the opportunity to graduate from Yale University and Georgetown University Law Center. From there, my passion was basically just civil rights and human rights. So while I was in law school, a lot of my friends are out making big bucks at the fancy firms. I was out doing the Lord's work, working with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in Egypt, the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, the National Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and I can go on, but you get the general idea. Graduated, clerked for a judge, a federal judge in DC, and litigated class actions to combat employment discrimination all around the United States. Some of those cases went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and I unapologetically kicked butt. Came back home to serve, became the first Black attorney to work at the City of North Miami Beach, assistant deputy and interim city attorney, and then somehow got finagled into running for this position in the Florida legislature. And I say finagled, I kind of say that tongue in cheek. I stopped running from a calling to just serve and serve in the best way that I could. So that is me.
Thank you, thank you. And then next up, we will have Terence Jones, the founder of the Total Justice Project, Inc.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me here. My name is Terence Jones. I'm the founder and executive director for Total Justice Project. I started the nonprofit organization after I got a man out named Elmer Daniels out of prison who spent 39 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. When I got him out, he's the first person to ever be exonerated from the State Attorney General's office in the state of Delaware. Oh, thank you. I also recently did the investigation to help a guy named Eric Riddick get out of prison after 30 years. If you had young people in the audience that followed Jay-Z and Meek Mills, they've been Instagramming it and talking about him getting out. It was on Good Morning America and MSNBC, and throughout, the nation as far as getting this young man out who my investigation proved that he could not have committed the murder that he was accused of. And the cover-up in it was, just outrageous from the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office and the Philadelphia Police Department. The reason why I mention that is because I'm a former highly decorated Philadelphia police officer, and I helped get 2 officers locked up in Philadelphia. And I know everybody's going into their background, but I had a commander recently confront me and said, "I thought you bleeded blue. Why would you get these 2 cops, help to get them locked up?" And I said, "I don't bleed blue, bro. I bleed red." And at the end of the day, I'm proud of being a black man. I come from an extremely poor, disenfranchised neighborhood in West Philadelphia, similar to Will Smith's neighborhood of West Philadelphia. But the difference between me and him is I grew up the youngest of 6 boys, and I grew up witnessing firsthand domestic violence from my father beating my mother. I've seen violence my whole life. I'll be 58 tomorrow on Father's Day. And I saw it with my brothers, with my father, who was in the home, beating up my mother all the time. And then he became a police officer. And when someone would call 911, when my mom would scream, he would say, "What do you want?" "Oh, Officer Jones, I didn't know it was you." "What do you want?" "Well, we got a call, someone screaming." "Do you see anybody screaming?" "No, we don't see anybody screaming." "Okay, all right, get out of here." And then he would ask us, "Which one of you called the police?" And we said, "Dad, we would never call the police on you." So moving forward, what changed my life was Mr. Lloyd was beaten up brutally, an older gentleman, and my brothers told me to come outside. And I ran outside, not knowing why I was coming outside, and I saw that Mr. Lloyd was beaten up brutally. And I chased my brothers, because I didn't see the guy they were chasing. And at some point, my brothers, who were track stars, and they were older than me, had stopped. So we were all trying to catch our breath. And I said, "Why are we running? What's going on?" "Oh, this guy robbed Mr. Lloyd and beat him up." So I said, "Everybody calm down." So I was meant to do what I'm doing, because I said, "Everybody calm down, let's catch our breaths, because this guy can't be in better shape than you two." And then when we stopped, we heard, we grabbed the guy, we told him he was under arrest, even though we were civilians. We took him back to the neighborhood. We protected him from the neighborhood, because they wanted to beat him up. And we called the police. And I got the Liberty Bell Award from the city of Philadelphia, the mayor and all that. And one of the questions they asked me during the press conference was, "You should be a police officer." And I just couldn't believe you could get paid for doing something like that. So all these years later, I became a police officer. And I locked up guys like that. I saw, growing up, it came from violence with knives and bicycle chains, where black men were killing black men, and it turned into black men shooting and killing black men hating themselves and killing each other. And even though I locked up a lot of them, I would always talk to them and talk to their loved ones. And it's hard to take away someone who hates someone. So I spend a lot of time off duty, which I would say to most police officers, anybody can do what you get paid for. Can you go off duty like I did and teach literacy and play some basketball and have a relationship with the community? And that's the most important thing, because once you have a relationship, they'll give you information. These murders are unsolved because a lot of the police, which are good, don't have those relationships. And later on, I started doing what I'm doing now. And that's what I do. I do these type of investigations, civil rights investigations throughout the whole country. And I was able to get 10 police officers locked up based on my investigation. And I'm here to not bash the police. I love the police. I'm a former police officer. But we all have to work together. And that's it. And I have the Total Justice Project. You can follow me on Instagram, 𝐼MTJustice. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And without any further ado, our last panelist that we'll introduce, and I'll explain why I saved Ms. Foster for last after she introduces herself and tells a little bit about herself. Crystal Foster of We Stand for Justice.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I first want to say it's an honor and a pleasure to be here on this panel with such powerful people as you all and Mr. Pettis and Tabernacle Church. I thank you all for inviting us as well. This is a great topic. Happy Juneteenth. This is a great topic. We need to have many discussions of the issues that we're having in America and critically in Miami, Florida. My name is Crystal Foster. My organization is We Stand for Justice, and I am 44 years old, originally from New York City, came down at the age of 13. Thought, my mother thought it was a better environment for the family, and we came down, been through a lot of challenges in life. I was in a severe grease fire at the age of 20, playing basketball for Miami-Dade. Was told I was never gonna walk again. And it took me 1.5 years to learn how to walk from the house fire. So I just thank God that He allowed me to overcome that big challenge. And then in 2012, we got a phone call that my sister-in-law had lost her life in a drive-by shooting in which she had 5 children at the time at the age of 25. And my brother at the time was living in New York City and traveling in New York City. So we had to help raise his children. And then in 2015, my brother lost his life to a police officer in Homestead, in which are the same children of the young lady who lost her life. So we are currently raising 6 children with no mother and no father. And we know firsthand what it is to live in an injustice system. We know firsthand what it is to see code of silence, the challenges that we see in Miami and in America. The officer that murdered my brother, Edward Foster III, had killed 3 people and shot 6 people in less than 10 years. He was promoted 1 month after his death in the city of Homestead. And my challenge is to ensure and serve and make sure that we do get justice for my brother, and not just for my brother, but for other families as well. I also was able to get, in with the help of social media, Mr. Chambliss and so many people, to get body cameras on these officers in Homestead. So I think that was one of the biggest victories that we have accomplished together. And when I say we, that's why I founded my organization a month ago. We stand for justice, because it's not it's not a one person that can get justice. It takes a village to raise children, and it's gonna take a village to get justice. So I feel like we standing on this panel together in unity, we could definitely make a change in Florida and definitely in America. And again, I wanna thank you all for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. And I apologize, I've been remiss. I missed one of my favorite politicians on our panel, and that is Mr. Pizzo, Jason Pizzo of District 38, State Senator. Please introduce yourself and accept my apology. I won't blame it on anybody up there that maybe miss you, but it's as it should be.
Pastor called me chubby before when he did the introductions, when he said all these heavyweights up here. But I'm working on it, Pastor. I'm working on it. Welcome to the district. No, I'm on the eve of Father's Day. I'm proudly the father of 14-year-old identical twin boys who are my lens and my inspiration. I'm the mediocre husband of April of many years. I need to work more at that. But I sort of fell into this role, kind of like what Rep. Joseph was saying. I came down here in Miami in 2007 to go to law school, no intention of being a lawyer, no intention of taking the bar, and criminal procedures just sort of clicked, and ended up becoming a prosecutor here in Miami-Dade County. And it wasn't long before judges in the courtroom would say, well, Mr. Pizzo, if you don't like the law, then you should go to Tallahassee and change it. And after standing over the bodies of dead children and shooting victims and starting a gun violence task force primarily dealing with the shootings and homicides of juveniles, I said, okay. So even though we are in a hyper-partisan atmosphere in Tallahassee, the House and the Senate both controlled by Republicans, like 60% of America, 30 to 50 states. I was proudly named the chairman of criminal justice in the Senate, which is kind of a big deal. And to be able to introduce and really tailor to specific and selfishly narrow measures that will benefit our community, which will seek to remedy and cure many issues that we have that are rather unique, tragically unique, and not to be coupled together with the great majority of geography elsewhere in Florida. We have very specific and very unique situations here in Miami-Dade County. And it's my passion. This is supposed to be a part-time legislature that Representative Joseph and I joke about all the time, but it's like raising kids. If you do it right, it's a full-time job. And so I proudly represent 560,000 constituents in 15 cities and parts of unincorporated Dade. I get up every morning as early as possible, go to bed as late as possible, loving my job, because it's not a job. And I don't come from any sort of legacy. I don't have any uncles or aunts or parents, whatever, that were in politics. The last time I held an elected position was senior class president in high school. But that gives me a certain freedom. I'm known to say what's on my mind all the time, and you know where you stand with me. And there is a certain freedom of being able to say it. Sometimes those truths are uncomfortable. Sometimes they're just directed to be tough love measures, but I think they're absolutely necessary. And what I continue to see, which pains me each and every single day, whether it's on the news or in person, is this sentiment amongst kids that don't value their own life. And if they don't love themselves, if there's no one or nothing to make proud of them, they're not expected to value anybody else's. And that's what we need to get to. So you have a tall task at hand, Pastor. And welcome to the community, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, thank you. So, you may applaud, all the panelists. All right, so now we get to the good stuff. So, a few things of note or order. We want to make sure that we keep our answers, our questions pointed, direct, succinct answers. We want to limit our answers to 1 to 2 minutes at the most. We want to make sure that we have an opportunity to flush out the diversity of thought from this panel. As we see, we have various different types of people on the panel, so the things that we want to get to our audience are going to be how we feel about the attack on our voters' rights. We want to flush out whether or not we have, as the panel's called the Can You Breathe Town Hall, want to talk about whether or not we can relax now that the George Floyd case is over and that there was a conviction of Derek Chauvin in the case. We also want to flush out what we can do about accountability from the police standpoint. What we can do about the voter suppression tactics. And we also want to flush out what the church's role and the church membership's role is in social activism and awareness. And those are kind of some of the things that we've been asked to focus on in this panel. So that's what most of my questions to the panel are going to be about. All right? So with that said, I think I'm going to start with the political arena. And since I was got to Mr. Pizzo last, I'm going to give you the first crack at it, okay? Please describe to the community how bills like the bill that's set up to change our voting rights, how that process goes between, state Senate bill and House bill. Kind of explain that process so that our viewers and listeners can understand how that works.
Sure, and mind you, everything I'm going to tell you comes from watching Schoolhouse Rock as a little kid. I'm just a bill, Capitol Hill. Our state system mirrors that of the federal system. So we have a House and we have a Senate. We have the three branches of government, and then we are part of the legislative branch. So Representative Chambliss is in the House and I'm in the Senate. And we get together and we come up with an idea and we put it into drafting. Now, some of the most recent ideas that have festered into bills that have been passed into laws are things that are direct or indirect attacks on the rights of individuals, on the freedom of individuals, on the liberty of individuals, and the rights to exercise as well. By way of example, SB 90 is the Senate bill. So Representative Chambliss and I get together and we say, you know what, we think the driving age should not be 16, it should be 17. He's going to file a bill in the House that says, you know, heretofore, whereas the driving age is, you know, shall be 17 years old. I have to file pretty much the same bill, and they'll travel a path. Now, if he's filing a bill as it relates to driver's license and I'm filing the same thing, it's going to go to Transportation Committee in the House, it's going to go to Transportation Committee in the Senate. It'll probably go to at least 3 committees, maybe appropriations and rules. Whenever you hear appropriations, they're talking about money, things that have to be spent on the state budget. We have to successfully get through each and every single committee before it goes to the floor, that large dome room where it looks like we're saying important things, but really asking what you had for lunch. And it has to go through all of those committees successfully by a majority vote until it gets to the floor. It's read twice on each side, and a vote happens, a vote occurs. But the bills have to match, and very often what will happen is Representative Joseph and I had a bill together this year. Mine was SB 1802, and she had the companion bill, and Representative Joseph had a wonderful idea, you know, that domestic violence really spiked last year, and as well as a number of other crimes. And so Representative Joseph had a brilliant idea to do a carve-out. You know, in Florida, I can't record a conversation between myself and another person without their permission. It's one of the few states that has that. It's actually 11 states in the United States. But we don't think that people, especially people that are being predatory or violent, should take advantage of that. So if there are communications that are otherwise not able to be recorded and shared, Representative Joseph had a great idea that we should have an exception, that you should be able to share those communications if you're the victim of domestic violence or a restraining order, and be able to show them to police and or to their attorneys. Well, as they started, they were both the same. And then as we moved along, Representative Joseph edited some stuff. I think I edited one thing. But at the very end, they came together and they were the exact same language. And that's how it happens. But I'm sure we're going to get into it. A number of the bills that you saw in the news or you read about in the paper have nothing those rights that we say we hold. 1 million votes were counted by 7:30 when, you know, by the time polls closed. So it begs the question, why change it? Because in a partisan fashion, the Democrats did very well with the system that was in place. The voting by mail, keeping social distancing, and doing so by mail was efficient and effective, but too effective for one particular side.
Very good. So, one, I'd like to answer. What's been the biggest change that you have seen in the world or in your personal life or in your career since the George Floyd Good.
Deputy Chief Belcher. Well, I can say there's been a lot more of these panels. Yes, we got past that point, but we're still not in the clear. We still have work to do as a community. Teachers, everybody needs to be involved with this to connect with our young people, to educate them, but also educate the law enforcement officers who are going out there dealing with our young people to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. But there's a time where we have to de-escalate, you know, from putting pressure or the way we talk to people or the way we do things. That's very important that everybody, not just the police officers, but also the citizens in the community, meaning our youth, who we may walk up on, and they might have an attitude. I spoke with a young man the other day at our park, one of our parks, and I spoke to him. He said, "Man, why are you trying to talk to me?" And I said, "Why are you so angry?" And so after a while, he was with a group of guys, and they caused a disturbance out to the park, but he was with a group of guys to where I was able to pull him aside. And he would say, and he would try to get permission somewhat from his other friends that sat off to the side and laughed and said, "Oh, he got you," you know. And I would say, "Are you a leader?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm a leader." I said, "Why you keep trying to get approval from them to talk to me?" I said, "Look at me." So you have a lot of these incidents that's going on as far as we trying to build that gap or that bridge from the police to the communities and stuff, and that's going on across the nation. We see a lot of the marchings going on, Black Lives Matter going on, but it's been a big change in those areas as far as politically and also socially, as far as the things that we're trying to do to better things in America and across the nation, in our cities, in our districts. So that's been a lot as far as what I've been noticing. But one thing I could also say is that we had an uptick, and I know we had COVID last year, 2020. We had an uptick in domestic violence, like you said, and we had an uptick in homicides, to where people are just going crazy. And those are the things that we have to try to control by either getting the message out and making more contact with these individuals out in the street to try to change their mindset and change their direction.
Because we see so many similar cases, but not the same results. So that was definitely a victory that we saw in America with George Floyd. However, there's so much more work that needs to be done. I feel like there definitely needs to be some more resources in the neighborhoods, and our parents needs to be held accountable as well, because we lost parenthood. You know, nowadays the parents are the friends of their children, and they're not involved as they should, and that's one of the biggest issues, that they're not monitoring their social media. They're not eating at the same table for dinner anymore. There's not conversations in a household. So it definitely is gonna take all of us to change the mindsets of our youth. I see and I help a lot of parents. We've had so many shootings on the gun violence in Florida, and with the police accountability, it comes from the, let me separate, with the gun violence with the youth in our community, it comes from depression, lack of love in the household. You know, we as the community pastors, activists, leaders, grassroots organizations, and the politicians that have the power to help bring the resources, we all have to play our part. We all have to be involved. And with the George Floyd case, I just think that we need to really have more accountability and transparency on all levels. So, like I said, you know, there's more work that needs to be done. We are definitely in a very critical state of an emergency in Florida, Miami. And as he spoke with COVID, depression, no one's talking about mental illness, mental health. That's one of the biggest issues with COVID. Everyone is in depression. There's no finances. Again, there's so many levels and issues going around America in our city. But for myself, I just need that we need to have more accountability and transparency and the right policing in our city. Not just any police. Yes, you could bring police into the city to resolve and minimize shootings. But when it comes to police accountability, we need to have policing to go back into the neighborhood and get to know the neighbors. Let the neighbors get to know the neighbors. Because when I was growing up, I was never allowed in the room with adults when they were speaking. And that's the issue we are having now. So when we get to that level, we will definitely see a change in our city.
Okay. All right. Another one for what's the biggest change you've seen since Floyd? Okay, go ahead, Representative Chambliss.
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. One, I got a call from someone who, when I was in grad school, that I knew from back like 2006, 2007, during this time. But they didn't call me. They caught me on Facebook, you know, because I'm running for office. I was easy to find. And it was a letter of apology. White young lady. DeKalb County, Illinois is a majority white county. Mm-hmm. I was in grad school there. And a lot of, you know, like the black people or the black students for the most part, and a couple of community members, we were the minority there. And she sent me this heartfelt Facebook message apologizing. Not for what was going on currently. She apologized for not believing me when I told her that was going on when I was in grad school back in 2006, 2007. That the DeKalb County Police and the City of DeKalb Police that they were racially profiling us, that they were using aggressive tactics on college students because they really didn't like the fact that the black kids from Chicago were going to school in their town, that we were being unfairly targeted, like we're having, you know, like we're college advocates, and it's crazy. because as black college advocates, as someone as a Democrat, an elected official now, the black kids did not participate in the college Democrats. So that's how I ran into it, because I was the only black kid in the college Democrats. We were all in the NAACP.
Right.
And I was telling her that this was going on then. And so years, almost a decade later, she sent me an apology through faith. Hadn't talked to her since I left DeKalb County in 2009. But she was apologizing because she didn't believe me. She thought I was overreacting and that I was making a big deal out of it and that I was over-dramatizing the problem. And so that happened during that. So that's thing one. Thing two is, I'm also, I played, high school sports like many of us. But I played them in Deep South, right? And I was playing high school and middle school football in the era where, you were treated like cattle, right? Like, you've heard the SEC type stories of they don't want you to talk about politics. They don't, they want to keep that out of there. They didn't even want me to talk about church because my coach was, it made him feel bad when I talked about God on the football team. I saw from our professional athletes a different level of movement in group. I remember when we were talking about Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan would say, well, remember the old quote when they were asking him to get involved in politics in North Carolina, and he said, well, Republicans buy shoes too. So he wasn't.
Right.
But we saw them get involved at a higher level. And I think, and that was very liberating. That was, for somebody like me who remembers those times where the coaches really didn't want you to get in those conversations, to see them unashamedly and unapologetically begin to have that open conversation, begin to advocate not one or individually, but in group, I thought that was monumental. So those probably were two of the main things that happened during that time period.
Very good. Mr. Pizzo?
So it was in bittersweet fashion. I was optimistic about seismic shifts and substantial changes, and frankly, I was disappointed. Whenever you see videos and newsreels of tragic things happening anywhere in the country, it's by state action. So when you're thinking of the levels in the hierarchy of government, you have your home, which is a dictatorship because mom controls. But outside that, you have your city, you have your county, you have your state, and you have your national. And right after the May killing of George Floyd, and I'll tell you, the most amount of texts and phone calls I got were actually from outraged police officers to be grouped in or to be characterized as that type of action because they're the closest to it, and it befalls upon them and besmirches them. But let me tell you why I was disappointed. I had seen with Trayvon Martin, I had seen from Baltimore and other places, I had seen athletes and celebrities sort of get involved at the highest national level or at the most local level, which was great to see, right? But it doesn't change any laws. All of these actions you see are state actions. And finally, ESPN, one of their contributing editors, wrote an article that said, hey, all you athletes should be calling your state legislators. And we forwarded that to the Dolphins, and I got together with my buddy from the other side, Senator Jeff Brandis, and he did the same thing in Tampa with hockey teams and football teams, the Buccaneers, and they were super excited. And the Dolphins called and they said, listen, we got 14 players right now that have formed their own group that want to get something done, that insists on getting something done and making changes. And it was a really excited, great conversation to begin with. We wanted to include them sort of in a panel on drafting new bills, and then it just sort of withered out. When you see athletes from taking a knee to wearing a hoodie to making statements to posting things, that doesn't change, doesn't affect, and doesn't touch those bills that create either the allowance, the allocation of, or the restriction of certain behavior unless it goes through the state legislature. All of that is state action. And I guess this is sort of a marketing pitch for the job that we do, but everything that sort of controls your life is a result of a statute. And that's where the attention needs to go. And insofar as you have that communication, that's where it needs to go.
Very good, thank you. Representative Joseph?
So I'm going to tie in a couple of the comments made so far. As far as the biggest change since George Floyd, I think in our generation, in our generation, my mic, just kidding. What happened to my mic? I don't know. Mic
There you
check.
go.
There we go. All right. Yeah, I missed nothing. It's the lead up. So the biggest thing that has changed since George Floyd's murder is part of what Representative Chambliss alluded to, is the inability of certain people to hide from, deny, and ignore the realities of structural racism in our criminal justice system and police brutality in general. You know, it's one thing to kind of see it in passing, but there was something about those 8 or 9 minutes and letting it sink in and processing it in that moment that the world could not hide from it anymore. Between what kicked off in these United States and worldwide, we felt that sentiment of a need for change. For the younger generation that hadn't really grappled with racism in the way that, let's say, the prior generation that we saw with the Edmonds-Pettus Bridge, that same realization, that inhumanity on display for all to see, and what that does, and how that motivates, and how it's a trigger that ignites a movement of a desire for change, that same sentiment that Senator Pizzo talked about. So one of the things I had done last summer, subsequent to the murder, was to try to channel the energy of these young people to get to so we saw what they wanted to do, let's hit them get there, because they may not understand how the laws work, but we do. So what do? So I convened a Black Lives Matter roundtable of over 50 organizations between Miami-Dade and Broward County, including law enforcement at the table, from the NAACP to Black Lives Matter to Dream Defenders, you name them, in our community, they were at the table. And the goal was to have them, to center them into the policy making. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley has a comment that she makes, which is the people closest to the pain should be closest to the policy making. And
You got to repeat that, please.
the people closest to the pain need to be closest to the policy making. Because George Floyd was a new realization for a lot of people who had not felt that before. But for a lot of us in this room and a lot of us watching this, we feel that literally every day. We know what that means. We know what that inequity feels like. We know it. From how we have to modify how we talk to people, how we dress, how we wear our hair, to just try to survive an encounter with law enforcement. Because you don't know how it's going to go through. From Sandra Bland, who I'll always say her name, to the countless others. And it's not that one life is more important than the next. They're all, and should be, equally valuable. But we know that they're not equally valued. And I think the murder of George Floyd brought that to the spotlight in a way that this country, this world had not done so. And it sparked a lot of things inside of us that go beyond just that interaction. And when you have that, what do you do with that to harness that energy? Well, we tried with some criminal justice reform in the Florida legislature. Now, we did ultimately come up with some criminal justice reform that included training around a duty to intervene. So when you see a law enforcement officer doing something that they shouldn't, that the law enforcement officer also has a duty to intervene. That included a duty to render medical aid. So remember in the George Floyd murder trial, how the paramedic was talking about how she wanted to intervene and render aid? Well, now there's a duty to do that. And a whole bunch of other things that we included, a minimum age of arrest. You know, we talk about the school to prison pipeline. It's not the age that we wanted, but we got it at least 7. Now, you laugh, but this is a big deal in a Republican-dominated legislature with a governor who at the same time, so while we were trying to harness this thing for positive energy, we got a governor who decided he wanted to use that to come up with the anti-protest bill. And we call it HB1, which is really Hate Bill 1, where now he empowers people to run over protesters. So if you remember Heather Heyer back in Charlottesville, and this white terrorist supremacist ran her over, instead of protecting that victim, these folks decided they wanted to empower people to run people over. Ain't that something? I'm gonna just stop right there because I'm getting mad just thinking about it. But what the dance that we dance in Tallahassee, where we are right now, is trying to find those areas where we can find bipartisan agreement, because we have no choice, because we don't have the numbers. And I'm not trying to, and you asked earlier about what can the church do and how do you get involved. And I'll just say this, and I'll keep saying it because I'm a daughter of a pastor and I come from a long line of faith-filled people. Faith without works is, I'm gonna say it again, faith without works is, so you can be so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. You need to figure out how you are going to engage. You need to be the hands and feet. That's on us. When he left, and he left the Holy Spirit for us to do greater things, that's what he was talking about. So wherever you're planted, whatever your skill set is, your time, talent, your treasures, that's what you have to invest in the community. And the thing that burdens your heart, the thing that gets you riled up, the thing that makes your skin crawl, that's part of your calling. What are you doing with it?
Wow. You brought us to a point in this discussion that is going to be uncomfortable to some, because as we Christian folks who are present and accounted for and watching and listening, this is the part where we might step on a toe or two. One of the reasons we have our pastor at the panel is to help me moderate that section of this section, because as I have said a couple times today, we don't want anyone excommunicated or whatever, disassociation and those different types of things that can happen to us in the church. So he's going to be responsible for leading us down this path. But as we go into what is the responsibility and the role of the church and its membership in social activism, in community activism. I think that a lot of times we just want to come to church to preach or hear preaching, singing, and we want to be more concerned about what's within the walls or what's within our campus, while all these things are happening around us. And so the question is to you, Pastor, and I think it's important, as I read your bio, that you've worked on the West Coast of the United States. You've also ministered and pastored in Canada, which is our closest neighbor, or one of our closest neighboring countries. Can you help us understand what you've seen differently as it relates to social injustice in those areas and how it's handled differently, and what you personally feel and have experienced in ministry as it is guiding your church?
Thank you so much.
And not to put you on the spot. Okay.
Oh no. It's perfectly fine.
Okay.
At this point, the role of the church. You also reflected on George Floyd, and that incident, like many individuals who watched the video, I had a burning desire, a conviction, not to sit silent, not to sit in a padded pew and feel comfortable, while a black man and other black men and women are gunned down or killed or have a knee on our necks. I remembered, now I was in Portland, Oregon, before transitioning over to Miami. And Portland has been in the news quite a bit because of the rowdy protests. One of those protests, I remember for weeks upon weeks of protesting in the streets of Portland. We were downtown Portland, and we blocked a bridge, one of those bridges downtown. And we were lying down face first on the bridge in Portland, stopping traffic, of course, and the police officers.
Did you say we?
When I say we,
No, I'm just trying to clarify. You personally, pastor of Tabernacle SDA Church, was laying down on a bridge, stopping traffic?
yes.
Okay.
When I say
Can we say amen to that, please?
By
Well-
the way, that would be illegal under the new law.
under the new law, that's illegal. But I was in Portland, so it's legal. and here, if it happens,
I think the members here will bail you out if you should do that
and
again.
if it happens here again, then I'll break the law. So I'm sorry. Now here is just my part in the conviction part. Lying down in the street for over 9 minutes has an effect on you. And to see the length of time that this man was under the knee of someone, that has an effect on you. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was not a dry eye in the entire bridge. Now, we're talking thousands of people. When we first started, when we were standing at the starting line of this protest, it was just a few of us. In fact, there were not a whole lot of people from the church. There was only myself and another pastor standing at the front of this line with about 50 people. And I'm sorry if I get more emotional about it, because I was hoping there'll be more people. And we stood there because of the death of someone and realized that a lot of people from the church was absent. And as we continued to march, more people joined. The role of the church is one of advocacy. If the church does not stand, then who will? When I watched the video, even today we had a program that reflects on the civil rights movement. And I saw the signs that it was held in that video. And I saw church folk. It was the church that took the active stand in leading the civil rights movement. So I wondered, at this point in our history, this pivotal time, where is the church? That was my question as a leader in the church. And even after calls were made, it took countless calls for individuals in the church to finally see that they too are part of this. And finally, I was amazed to see so many more, not all, mind you, that came out and were also advocates. We had many nights of protest, many days of protest. We marched until we ached. We lied on the street countless days asking for justice. So when you asked what is the biggest outcome that we see from George Floyd, right now I see a conviction where there never was one. I cried because I saw something that we've never seen before. A police officer, sorry, Deputy Chief, but I saw a police officer convicted for a crime that took place that the entire world saw. And believe me, I thought he would get off. I thought he would be free right now and probably even have a promotion. So I cried when I saw conviction. I also, after I left the streets protesting, would go back and not sit down in the pew and preach, but sit in different committees in the city. And I think that the role of the church, I believe the role of the church and every member has to take an active part in its community and be actively involved in changing the policies and talking to individuals, the heavyweights, that be, so that those matters can be addressed appropriately. And that's what we did. When we left the streets, we went back and we called the leaders of the city, sat down in those conferences, whether they were virtual or in person. Most of it was virtual because it's the middle of COVID. And we talked about what needs to change. And therefore, those same policy changes took place when we had actions to allow for policing to now be part of the community. And what we saw was a change in the policing itself. Now you had laws that prevented knees going on necks. Now you have laws where there is that community advocacy, where we can have that community communication between the police officers and also the community to allow for there to be that engagement. Whereas there was that disconnect before.
Right.
And then I don't want to take up too much more time.
Well, I have to share with you. Is that video ready to go yet? Okay. So while you're talking, and since you brought up George Floyd and you brought up the protest in Oregon and laying on the bridge, I've been signaling the team here to get this video up. It's a song that was called The Best I Can't Breathe song ever. That was created by a pastor by the name of Raymond Newton out of Memphis, Tennessee, that I know, who happened to, out of the blue, call me, and I don't know what was happening, but he told me about this song. And what's interesting is that while I'm doing this and trying to signal them to find out if it's ready while you're talking, apparently I got a missed call from him a minute ago, right? So now he doesn't know what I'm doing. He may have seen it on Facebook that we're here, but the fact that he just tried to call me a minute ago while I'm in the process of trying to get this song playing, you know, that can only be God. Okay, so if you are ready, let us roll it.
New tonight, the mayor of Minneapolis is calling for criminal charges against an officer who was recorded with his knee on George Floyd's neck. In the video, you can hear Mr. Floyd saying, "I can't breathe, sir."
Sir, I can't breathe. Somebody, anybody, help me, please. He better give me what he needs. Mama, I love you. He had him calling on his mama, and they were so sad. About to get killed by another class member wearing a badge. And what's sad, they could have stopped him, but they chose to watch. What proved the police precinct is filled with dirty and racist cops. They say that they was hired because they love to protect. But how you gonna serve the public with your knee on her neck? I guess my skin color gives you the right to kill me, because in your world, since I'm black, I'm automatically guilty. Took a human's life and really could have been avoided. And you hear him say he couldn't breathe, but we're right about Satan voices. Your apologies, don't flush it down the toilet. Y'all kill brother after brother, and you show no remorse. And I'm praying the world hears when we speak. I can't breathe, officer, means I can't breathe. So please, sir, I can't breathe. Anybody, help me, please. He better give me what he needs. Eric Gunner stood outside the store with some cigarettes. They showed up without their hoods on, but still choked him to death. When he said he couldn't breathe, they must have applied pressure, cause they choked him out until there wasn't no breath in his body left. Remember Trayvon Martin, can't forget Michael Brown in the prime when their life over them was shot down. Gonna rest in peace in heaven. Visions of you when you crown. We gon' march and protest until these clowns go down. We ain't gon' stop till they stop killing our babies in the street, whether from gang violence or racist police. Mr. Chief of Police, yeah, you're sending out your finest. If you can't stop the violence, your position, you need to resign it. Kindly step down. If it's wrong, you can't see, but if you do, prosecute every murdering police. Sir, I can't breathe. Somebody
Yeah, I wanted you all to get a little glimpse of that, see some of those images that many of us may have forgotten. When I got that video from Pastor Newton and his song, he then told me that his 18-year-old daughter did that video, and had them on my show last week on the radio, and it was interesting to hear this young lady talk about the fact that her father wrote this song the day after George Floyd died and then recorded it. She heard it and then decided that she felt that it needed to have a video, not knowing all of the stories that were depicted in there that he was speaking about in the song. She went and did the research and found all the clips, and it was an educational moment for her, because while she had known some of these stories, didn't really know what truly happened, and was able to kind of merge a young person with their father, who is a pastor who created this song, and just was very powerful. So I wanted to share that. I see some folks look a little upset up there from that. That wasn't my intent, but Terence, go ahead and tell us what you're feeling after seeing that.
So with the Total Justice Project, I have cases across the nation, current cases, and since the death of George Floyd, the more things changed, the more things are the same. So I'm going to give you some facts. Not my opinion, but this is what I'm spending the rest of my life to do. I've done investigations across the country for the last 13 years. On a volunteer basis, I've helped lawyers get over $30 million and never received a cent in these investigations. Starting with Freddie Gray, the ministers brought me in to do the independent investigation. I helped to get 6 officers locked up there. I'm a former Philadelphia police officer, as I told you earlier, helped get 2 police officers locked up in Philadelphia, helped to get some officers locked up in New Jersey. So on January 13th of 2020, and as he drove away from the officers to a dead end, 27 feet. And when he backed up on the opposite side of the street. So like he tried to come around the officers here, and he backed up on that side of the street. And then the officers pulled their guns out and used profanity. Profanity shows started driving from this side of the street over to the left side of the street to go around the officer. And without moving his feet, bending his knees, 2 hands on the gun like this. You can't say that he was trying to run you over, because someone would have said, "Watch it, he's trying to run you over. Watch it." Or you would move, because it's a 3,000 or 4,000 pound car. As he goes around him, the officer fires 4 shots into his windshield, which didn't kill him. And as he drives by him, as Lamont Mo out of the side of his brains. And it didn't stop there. As he went by the officer, he then lost control of the car, and obviously he died. So when I say the more things change, the more things remain the same, everybody talks about criminal justice reform, and they focus on the police, the chiefs, the people that work for him and this police chief. But what about the prosecutors? Because at the end of the day, this police chief and any other police chief is going to do their investigation. And when they finish their investigation, they're going to have an administrative investigation with internal affairs. And then they're going to have a criminal investigation with the homicide division. And then a criminal investigation. So normally 3 different investigative units are going to investigate it, and then they're going to give it over to your state attorney general hasn't locked up 1 police officer. In 30 years, or I believe 27 years, both of their names are Kathy, ironically. In Delaware, in the past 27 years, they never locked up a police officer for shooting and killing someone. And that shooting that I just told you that happened January 13th, the Newcastle County Police Department has never released the video. So when you look, if you were to look on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, you would see that there are only very few people marching in Delaware. You'll see for Lamont Moses, it's just me and some of the family members. And the way we were able to get a video that was released that has never been released in that police department was I called up spur of the moment, because you don't have to always plan everything. Sometimes things are done in the spur of the moment.
So this is where you're teaching our activists how to be activists.
Yeah, why?
Okay.
So you don't want the enemy to know everything you're doing. So you're planning your Facebook and your social media and all that kind of stuff. You know, I'm old school. I'm kind of a dinosaur. I'll be 58 tomorrow. I called up the family and said, yo, let's march tomorrow. What do you mean? Well, let's get some people. No, just the family. Where are we going to go? Just had someone call me up to tell me where the police chief lives. Sorry, chief. Let's go to his house. Are we going to get locked up? If anybody's going to get locked up, it'll be me, and I've never been locked up. Never had the pleasure to get locked up in a protest. And I say pleasure because Martin Luther King got locked up. So I don't know what that feels like. But I normally don't know because we're videotaping, and I normally bring the news media. So if you're gonna violate my rights, I want to have it videotaped. And it's going to follow up with, I know a lot of powerful lawyers, it's going to follow up with a lawsuit. So we go outside of his house, long story short, I'm not going to keep you long. We go outside of his house, and I basically, said some things to the chief and told him that we'll be here every Friday until you release that video, because he refused to release the video. He said it's the Attorney General and it's all this kind of nonsense. And within 2 days after that protest in front of his home, that video is released, Lamont Moses, and you can see it on YouTube. But what I'm going to show you is the corruption from that police chief, who's the first black police chief in the history of Newcastle County. So it doesn't matter whether you're black. It's about justice. What you're going to see in that video is like a 7-minute diatribe of them explaining, who Lamont Moses is and what you're about to see. Like, they don't want you to see it for yourself. The fact that he's been locked up before and his past criminal, like, what does that have to do with what happened that day? That day was murder. You're driving around someone, 4 shots into the windshield and 1 shot in the side of the head as he's driving by him. So I don't have any confidence that they're going to lock up the officers. I'm preparing something when I get back tomorrow to New Jersey. I'm going to file something on Monday to the U.S. Attorney. I got to give it to the feds. Because like I said, just like your state attorney general, Kathy Fernandez-Rendell, she's never locked up any officers. And same thing in Delaware. So I got to give it to the feds. I got to give it to the U.S. Attorney's Office. So it's sad. So from my perspective, nothing's really changed in the sense that everybody's protesting and marching, but the ones that have the power to lock them up are not locking them up. And I don't know how it is here in Florida, but I can look it up. But I know in Delaware, you got the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. They're in the midst of voting for that. They've never approved it. And you have qualified immunity. And then you have most places, I tell them that you don't just have a civilian review board. If you don't have subpoena power, it's a waste of time. I'm going to say it again. Everybody's talking to me, ACLU, NAACP, asking my opinion. If you have a civilian review board without subpoena power, you have nothing. So I'm also Open Public Record Act advocate. I've won a lot of cases. I had to sue for 40, 50 cases that I've won undefeated to get public records. So, I mean, this is the stuff we should all be upset about.
Definitely.
Taxation without representation, it's backwards, you know what I mean? So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I see my countdown clock at 0. That means we must take a 10-minute break. And Brother Darren is going to continue with the some information for the audience. The panelists, you may leave your seat, stretch your legs. When we come back, we're going to go to Assistant Chief Belcher and have him follow up on some of the things that Terence said about police accountability. Thank you.
Great first round. Albert C. Pierre Community Service Center. Albert C. Pierre Community Service Center has been in existence for over 25 years and has been making an impact in this community. Albert C. Pierre Community Service Center, in its motto, it says, actions change people. That means that our actions change people. What you see here today is just a clear, defined example of what Albert C. Pierre Community Service Center does in our community here today. Another thing that Albert C. Pierre Community Service Center does is that tomorrow, Albert C. Pierce Community Service Center distributes over 150 bags of groceries to families that need it in the community to supplement their dietary needs. On Monday starts our Hope Summer Camp. This camp provides meals, academics, field trips, and lots of fun. Each child is tested before and after to monitor their progress. If you live in the area and you would like to send your child, text HOPE, H-O-P-E, to 855-539-6171. That's 855-539-6171 for an application. Next week, the Pierce Pantry and Community Service Center also will be serving 250 hot meals to the community within the area. On July 18th, the community service food distribution from 8 to 12 p.m. will be doing a COVID-19 vaccination to anyone who wants it, and no registration is required. You just walk up and you will be able to be vaccinated. In 2 months, ACP will be opening up its Vision Care Center, geared to serve the underserved in our community. This is providing eye screening and eye care to individuals in our community who cannot afford to pay the lofty prices for vision care. On September 11th, 2021, Pure Reality hosts its day conference, and on March 18th to the 20th, 2022, Pure Reality hosted its 16th youth retreat at Camp 𝐶𝐞. This is a program that educates teens and youths about the dangers and of an unguarded lifestyle. These are just some of the programs that are sponsored and held under Albert C. Pierre Community Service Center. It is the vision and the commitment of the Tabernacle Church members that saw the need in this community and throughout South Florida that empowered the Albert C. Pierre Community Service Center to take action because they believe that our action changed lives. I encourage you to support this Albert C. Pierre Community Service Center by your donations and supporting the programs that it also holds. I also encourage you to support the Tabernacle Church as it continues to make a dent and make a hit in our community, because at Tabernacle, ministry is a way of life. I thank you, and we look forward to the second part of this programming. Thank you.
Is it really not enough when you go to the great spot? When the world is enraged from watching a black man die, gasping for breath, and the man says, "I can't breathe," with his esophageal tube collapsed under a man's knee? Is it not enough to wake in the wake of hate perpetuated by a system dating back to Negro slaves? Beat that black man, make him pick cotton, shoot that black man, he looks like he's up to something. Is the American fury not enough for you? Crowds plowed through by vans driven by the men wearing blue. Who do you call when the cops are the killers? When the body camera footage shows me you're killing brothers and sisters. Is the execution of a man, is that not enough for you? Judge, jury, and execution by a man dressed in blue. You look down at us for behaving like an angry mob. If all men are created equal, what gives you the right to play God? Where is the leadership? Where is the fight? 4 days to be arrested for murdering a man in plain sight, and a 9-day riot to arrest that we're tired of being hurt in our culture not moving forward. Be it Selma, Malcolm X, the death of Dr. King, Freedom Riders' Bloody Sunday, I can hear the choir sing, Rosa Parks, the LA riots, the beating of Rodney King, Eric Gardner, Philando, Breonna.
His peace with Christ. And his chance was taken away by Derek. Now Derek has a chance to make his peace with Christ. Now, how does that work out? I mean, yes.
What if Derek already made his peace? We don't know what Derek has done or what he hasn't done.
That's what I'm saying. So how does
Derek could have already confessed his sins and he could have already been forgiven.
Oh yeah, I'm with you on that one, and I agree. Just like the thief on the cross, the last moment, or right after that, he come to realization and get forgiveness. God, that's what God is all about. That's why we can't count the one off. But how does it work in George's case? It's just that I mean, he's dead, so there's nothing we can do about it. No one can do anything about it, not even Christ. But I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe, all right, maybe he had the opportunity and didn't come to Christ, and probation was still for him. So I was just thinking out loud. I think I know the answer to that, but I was just thinking.
Before, I think God just don't cut off people, even though George died in that situation. I think he must have been called several times before, because Christ knew that this was going to happen. So I know that he was, based on what the Bible said, everyone get a calling. Everyone has a time either to accept or reject. I'm sure he was called before. And I know he knows about the Bible, but I don't know if he was doing what the Bible requires of him to be done. At the last moment when he was dying, he was calling out for his mom and not calling on the name of Christ. So I don't know if he had faith in his heart or whatever. It's only God know. But God not gonna cut us off, take us off the face of this earth without us having a chance of his calling, to see if we are to choose. And I think most of all, when our time is near, he must have put it in our way more than once for us to come. Because if you should listen to some people's testimony, they would say there is sometimes situation that the person who died get chances upon chances to accept Christ, and they refuse.
I don't mean to cut you, but this is where we gotta be careful, because we can still be living and our probation is closed. So we gotta be careful how we live and don't forsake the calling of Christ, because we could be a living dead. You ever hear say you're a living dead? Yeah. Probation is closed, but you're still living. So we as Christians have to be careful when we go about our daily business, not ignoring and staying close and focused on our true destiny. Because not like tomorrow is not guaranteed for any of us.
Right.
So we got to keep the focus.
Daily, pray without ceasing. They say confess and pray daily, because you don't know what tomorrow will be. And I don't know if he had a prideful life, but you can know when someone, based on what the final word is, you can always see where the Christian life stand. He wasn't calling for, that's for me. I don't know if it's for anybody else, but when there is trouble, the first
That is
person.
still an assumption, Sister Kelly. You're still assuming.
Yes.
So be careful. You're still
That's what I'm saying. For me, when there's trouble, the first thing I call on is God. I didn't hear him calling
Yes,
out.
because people can call on God and still not converting. Conversion is important. So you calling on God doesn't mean you're converted at heart, or it doesn't mean that you're going to be saved because you just call on him. You have to have a conversion of your heart in order to be saved. There are process that we have to go through as Christians. So I'm in my last breath and I say, oh God, that could mean something and it could mean nothing.
It depends on your heart.
If I am not truly converted in my heart, it doesn't really mean anything.
But that's what the thief on the cross did. The thief on the cross was on his last breath. And he now grant us, we don't know what kind of lifestyle he was living before. But the thief on the cross was at his last breath when he called out to Christ. I mean,
it was because he showed faith. No, it wasn't just that he called out. He showed faith because he called him master. That's why he showed faith. So it showed that he was converted. The other one wasn't saved. Why wasn't he saved? Because he didn't believe.
I'm just saying what you were saying. That
no,
even at the last moment, I just said, you can't just say God saved me, but if you're not sincere and
right, that's
it. Then it doesn't make any innocent, because the Lord at the end going to say, when the wicked, when his judgment, he's going to say, Lord, I did all of this in your name, and he's going to say, I know you're not. It's the same thing. So therefore, it's what you do in your heart that counts what you say outward. So if you're saying it in your heart and you're saying it outward, but if it's different in your heart and you're saying it outward, it's what you say in your heart that counts.
Yes, it's true. Okay.
Yeah.
Autism, mental health. Those individual organizations came to the table. We put a 90-day plan together of changing policies and implementing certain things and doing certain things as far as training, putting our officers through that training, and it helped. It worked. We not only did the training that we set aside for those 90 days, but we did extra training, additional training, because like I said, the policy must change. You must do things different. You must constantly train your officers. You must constantly tell them and direct them that this is what you need to be doing when you're going out there. And when you have a situation, somebody need to intervene, and somebody need to de-escalate whatever's happening if it's starting to go overboard. We have to understand that. We have to know that, but we also have to be told that. And I know people think, or some officers think, just because we're officers and we're adults that we should know these things, but sometimes it goes away. And I tell people, you have to go back to the beginning sometimes. When you start going downhill, whether it's in your profession or your relationship, you need to go back to the beginning, to the basics. Let's do basic police work. Because when we got out of the academy, basic police work was it. We got out of our cars, we communicated with people because we know we was being watched. We know we had to do special things to keep this job. We know we had to win people over in our communities to keep this job. So we did the certain things, the basic policing that needed to be done to keep peace between each other. Now, everybody across the board is not 100% going to do that. It's just like officers. Every officer is not a good officer. Every citizen is not a good citizen. So, but we have to, I guess, chip away at each one of those the officers and the citizens to try to get them on the right track. Is it going to be a challenge? Of course it is, because your one voice, my one voice telling this person, hey, you shouldn't do this and do that, they go back to their communities and listen to 10 other voices going to tell them otherwise, to go the other direction. So that's why I say we just can't stop at one voice. We have to keep going, whether it's the community or whether it's the police officer. We have to keep chipping away at it, and we must hold each officer accountable for their actions. Right. And make sure that we put the training in place to hold them accountable also.
Well, I guess the good thing is that the officers have the laws to deal with the bad citizens. But what I think find to be difficult is citizens have trouble trying to reconcile with what to do about bad officers. And one of the things that I personally, when working with the NAACP years ago, one of the things that I always found difficult was when people filed complaints or went to file complaints. Oftentimes you got arrested. It might have been as Mr. Jones deals with, a false arrest or what have you, and now that person goes to file their complaint and they're told dismissively, come back when you win your case. Well, it's difficult to win your case when you are ill-prepared for that arrest, meaning that you don't have the money for the attorney, you don't have money for bail, you can't afford to, in some cases, not work because you have this hanging over you, and now the person ends up, pleading out to something, and now their ability to now file a complaint is diminished because you wouldn't, I can't take your complaint now because you took a plea. So it becomes a vicious cycle. I've always wondered, why is it that they wait until they say you have to wait till the case is over before you can file a complaint? If I was falsely arrested or wrongfully arrested, then you should be investigating that complaint and handling that case at that time, not down the road. I know, Mr. Foster, you had a comment about something regarding that?
Police accountability. It ensures that the officers can work together effectively, right? The issues that we have and that I came across when my brother was murdered, the people won't understand the pain until it happens to them. You stand alone in this fight, and you learn through the process that there's so much corruption in our city, in politics, and on the top lead, our state attorney's office. For 28 years as a state attorney. And I know I'm gonna ruffle feathers, but it's good trouble. And it's needed to.
You would say that after I took my shirt off, but go ahead.
This discussion is needed because it can happen to you. It can happen to you, and it can happen to you. Our state attorney has never convicted an officer in 28 years. Particularly my officer, the officer in Homestead, Anthony Green, who has killed 3 people and disarmed his gun, shot 6 people. And there's more that we not aware of. That's an issue. That's an issue. For 5-6 years, we have not had a police report till this day. We have not had a police report. We have not had any documents on my brother's case until the case was closed, and we still are missing documents. And I want, the people to understand that you never accept no for an answer. Us as people, we are so powerful. We are so powerful, we don't even know it. And I say that because we are living witnesses of how powerful we are. If I, without going to to Tallahassee, can get the people, us together, to pass body cameras, that is powerful. What powerful does? You have to start, you have to ruffle feathers. You have to, attack in a good way, be consistent, because consistent is the key. When you stop, you know, that's when you don't get any results. And us being consistent, you know, staying together with the same message is what got us body cameras. But I want to say as parents, you know, we teach our kids because they're like sponges. You know, you mold your kids to do right and become successful in life. But then you go to school and you take them to school and then your teachers mentor your kids and you allow the teachers to teach your kids to be successful in life. So it's like a path. Then as officers, you go to your chief. But then when you go to the top lead, which is the state attorney, and nothing is being done, what do we do? And what I see is, and I'm so sorry to say, but I did 80% of my brother's case. And I want to tell everyone, social media is so powerful. I found most of the witnesses on social media. I never gave up to this day. To this day, I lost a lot throughout my
your journey.
It has been a chance, but throughout this journey, I lost a lot. Was it worth it? Absolutely. We're raising 6 kids that lost a mother and a father. And the only thing we can do is make sure we get justice for the children. My brother was shot multiple times, 9, 10 times, 6 in the back, broad daylight, on his knees. So, you know, when you cannot speak to anyone unless you've been through it. You cannot understand the pain until you have been through it. And the good thing, not the good thing, but what the victory we saw with George Floyd, everyone went through it. We all saw the pain through George Floyd's case. So, you know, that's accountability, that's transparency. And I pray no one has to go through the pain that my family's going through to this day, because we're still fighting. We lose sleepless nights fighting. But people are not understanding that, and politicians, and I'm so sorry, and there's good politicians, and I learned in 6 years there's good police officers. I just was in the presence. I did a huge march in the city of Miami, a historic march on Wednesday that has never been done before. I had police officers together with grieving mothers and fathers just to show that we can make change and stop the code of silence. We did that collectively. But us, together, we look up to our politicians. And we didn't have that in my brother's case until this day. And a lot of times, these politicians are getting funded. They're getting funded by these state attorneys, by certain organizations, so they remain quiet and they don't want to assist families like myself. They don't want to go to the state attorney to fight and ask, why is this officer being promoted? Is this case closed? There was, there's why certain, the questions. And I must commend Mr. Chambliss. When my brother was killed, he was the first gentleman, king, he's a king to me, that came to my family and assisted us through the process and said, you know what? There's something called the city council meetings. You need to attend with your family. That's where you voice your concerns. And that's what we did for so long. And I want to thank you, my brother. We need more men like you in this city, in the world of politics, to show that you are an example of what leadership is. That's what leadership does. You cannot be in that position and not have the heart for it. You cannot be in a position and not have a heart to make change. And I've been so strong, and seeing the video of these people, George Floyd, Eric Gardner, saying all these people that have been killed on a national platform. What about the cases that are not on a national platform, that are going through the same issues? What about those cases? Those cases matter. All lives matter. It's not a black or a white issue. We say Black Lives Matter, but do Black Lives matter to us? Do Black Lives matter to us? Because we're killing each other. We're killing each other. We're fighting each other. And we're supposed to be leaders. And I take this stand, and I know a lot of people don't understand and won't never understand my voice and the things that I do. But I do it because I have passion. And I would never want to see another family go through the pain that I've been through. And I'm a voice for any other voices that have not been able to get to the level that I've got. And God has blessed me with so many powerful people in my life. And I'm just so thankful. But the fight continues. And it continues for our youth. It continues for our youth. And we'll get justice because we have to ensure that there's going to be change. We have to be positive and keep our mindset. And then when we get more deputies and chiefs like Chief Belcher, we'll have a better city. We'll have a better city. And I just want to tell everyone, don't never give up. It's been 6 years. My brother's anniversary is next month. And we will get justice. We will get justice. And I pray, I pray again that these politicians, we're talking about police accountability and transparency in our community. I pray that they start speaking for families like myself. I pray they start teaching the officers on how to retrain. And what you protect. You took the oath to protect and serve. That is your job. No one asked you to do that. You took the oath to protect and serve. Now it's your turn, your time to do what's right. So we need to bring back education on our officers. Because again, you have the officer that executed my brother and the rapper T-Pain's cousin and so many other victims that stand with me because we stand together. I reached out, even the ones that are in prison. I wrote every inmate that's in prison behind this officer to let them know I stand with you. And I spoke to all of them because I am going to fight for them. I am going to fight for those people and any other families that are going through this process. But I asked, like Senator Pizzo stated, state law legislations, coming on the lives that we live, the things that we do is what, and I don't know politics, but what I do know is that we can't change the color of our skin, but we could change the positions that these people are in.
Say that again.
I don't know if you all heard me.
Say that again.
I said we cannot change the color of our skin, but we definitely, us as people, can change the positions that these people are in. And I am so thankful to be in the presence of, Ms. Dottie Joseph, State Representative Dottie Joseph, Senator Pizzo, Chambliss, all Terence Jones, Deputy Pastor, for him to say that he stood, that brought tears in my eyes, that he laid on the bridge to see what 8-9 minutes feel like to just, to support the families, because support goes a long way. To support the families of victims of police brutality. Support goes a long way. Phone call, standing with a family. I stand alone in this fight for 5 years. Alone in this fight. Fighting against a powerful woman, Catherine Rundle. And no one has even contacted my family to help us. So when you have a pastor that is involved in the community, that shows a lot. And we need more pastors. We need more chiefs. We need more representatives like our panelists today in our community to make the change. And I'm sorry to take up the time, but it's just so heartbreaking, and I teared to see the video because we relive the moment. When George Floyd called for his mama, he called for everybody's mama. When he called for his mama, he called for everybody's mama. And I still, as of today, could not watch those minutes of him losing his life. Because I could only imagine if I was with my brother that day, I could have probably saved my brother's life by any means necessary. Any means necessary. So again, I tell everyone, you have to have a heart for this. If you want change, change is in us. Change starts in us, in the community, in the people. Because we, again, are the people that are in power, and we are the ones that can make the change. And I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Representative.
So I'm going to pick up where she, hold on, here it goes, take 2. Here it go. I'm going to pick up just where she dropped off. We can't change the color of our skin, but we could change the positions these people are in. Can I just talk to the church for a minute? Can I just talk to y'all? Can we talk? Can we have an honest conversation? Inside the house. So when we think about Jesus' time here on earth, and when he got mad and when he didn't, and when he condemned and when he forgave. There's a difference. If you're looking just at the 10 Commandments, for example, there are a lot of sins. Why is it politically we get hung up on some sins and not others? When we were called to be his hands and feet here on this earth, it was to protect those who were being oppressed, the widow, the children. That's who we should be protecting. That's not what's happening. Why? Let's talk about it. I'm gonna ruffle some feathers too. Because we let certain people use religion and Christianity as a political football when they don't really care about us.
You gotta say that again.
There are a lot of politricks that are played in this game, and we need to let the scales fall from our eyes and not get lost in the indoctrination and blindfold just following the leader and see what's actually going on. When Christ was confronted with a woman with a sexual sin and people wanted to throw stones at her, he had a different approach. I don't need to get into that. Y'all know that story. When he was confronted with people in his house, his father's house, doing stuff that they were not supposed to do, using a house of worship, a house where you should be getting justice, a house where truth should be spoken for their own financial gain, that's when my man got mad. And that's when we need to get mad. We need to have a real reckoning in the church about what that means and how all sins are not the same. How do you choose, of all the list of things that are happening in this earth, our children are dying, not just our men, but our women too. People, and this is not a partisan thing. It's not. Because when you talk to people, when we look in Florida and the policies that people, Democrat, Republican, Independent, support, they're things for the people. Whether you're talking about expanding Medicaid so we can just have real health coverage, whether you're talking about making sure that you can have a life, whether you are talking about raising the minimum wage, all of those things we agree on. Talking about treating men and women equally under the law. Democrats and Republicans, we agree on those things. Even universal background checks for guns. Guess what? We actually agree. But you know who does not agree? The people in charge. The people who are running roughshod over our house. Whether you're talking about the church, whether you're talking about the House of Representatives, or any place that's supposed to be sacred. When you saw that January 6th insurrection, that was an assault on all of democracy everywhere. It was. We talk about what happened after George Floyd. Yes, there was that sentiment to have a change. Yes, there was that sentiment to do something positive. But we know that we do not war just against the flesh and blood. We don't. And if you miss that, you're in a war that you don't even know you're fighting in. So, we also saw in the aftermath a governor who put together policies that would make exactly the kind of civil disobedience that we, once the church was engaged, used to be involved in to make that illegal. You also saw, right now, before our eyes, an onslaught of just critical thinking. Yes, we're talking about critical race theory, but it goes beyond that because they want to rewrite history. Because if you forget where you came from, if you forget the struggles you made, whether you're talking about the people of Israel or the people here, it's the same consequence. History will repeat itself. And we cannot allow ourselves to get so complacent to forget that ever, ever. The Voting Rights Act is still in limbo. So instead of just talking about the problem, let me talk to the church for real. Here's what y'all need to do. Philosophically and then practically. Philosophically, we need to not get hung up on two issues of all the sins that there could be that don't really impact our lives. I'm not saying You can't have your expression, you can't have your faith, you can't have your belief. I'm not saying any of that. Nobody believes the right and the sanctity of life more than me. No one. But I will never, ever sacrifice up a mother or a family to do something that, if God himself gave us the right to do things, because he could have created us like angels, he could have just programmed us to do whatever he wanted to do. No, he gave us free will. And each of us have to live with those consequences. And answer for them. From King David and his interactions with Uriah and his wife, and the consequences on that child. Who are we to think that we're better than him? Who are we? We're not. And if anybody tries to tell you different, it's a lie out of the pit of hell, used to manipulate and control you, and nothing more and nothing less, because they don't care about you. Because if they did care about you, if they did actually care about that child, they would care about all these babies dying right now, the living, breathing people in the outside of the womb. They would care. If they actually cared about that unborn baby, they would provide resources for that family to be able to address the needs of that child and that family. Oh, you just have it and we just gonna turn our backs on you. What is that?
Cut your food stamps, cut your Medicaid.
All of that.
No health insurance, no money, no jobs, none of that, but
So all
don't
that
have an abortion.
philosophical stuff, we need to get past that and talk to what's really happening. Pastor, you talk to people all kinds of times. And sometimes it's about something philosophical, but at the end of the day, when that woman comes to you, let's say there's a domestic violence situation, do you force her to stay and get her butt beat? No. Not if you're following the spirit of the law. And we need to get to the point where we're actually after the spirit of that law. So, politically, I done told y'all about these politics. If you hear me, those who have ears to hear will hear. As far as the practical steps, I need to just connect the dots for people. Name any issues you care about, whether it's police brutality to making sure you have affordable health care, affordable housing. Name any of those issues, Democrat, Republican. Right now, I will tell you, and the senator and my colleague in the House of Representatives will attest, that we are the only ones fighting for it. And to the extent that certain Republicans might want to, they are shut down by a system that keeps them in lockstep control in a way that I have not seen anyway. Y'all understand what I'm saying? The point is, right now, the opposite reaction of that movement that we saw, that positive energy out of George Floyd, the forces of darkness have an opposite reaction. And that is to quell your desire to get engaged in politics at any level, from protests to writing people because they don't care. And the only thing that will change that is if we fully engage and get them out of office. There's no policy. We can sit up here and talk about all kinds of things that would change till we're blue in the face. But until we have the numbers in those seats and those people making those decisions to make a difference, it does not matter. It doesn't matter. And I know we want to stay out here and just say, well, you know, here's the thing. If you are called to do something, prayer is part of it. You look at the Proverbs story, she didn't just sit around and pray. Praying is part of it. Faith without works is, so what are your works? So you need to get engaged at every level. If we're talking about this particular discussion that happens you heard her talk about what the representative told her about getting involved in the city, local government level, that's part of it. You heard about conversations with the state attorney's office, that's part of it. We have an atrocious attorney general. I'm not even gonna get into that. That's a whole, like hardcore for me to say that. This woman, you have right now prosecutors and defense attorneys for people who are on death row who have agreed to do DNA tests. And this lady's like, yeah, I know DNA tests for you. What the actual heck? And we voted her in. So my point is, at every level, we need to engage, and not just at the, people stay focused on the president. Even right now, the president is doing some things, but he's limited by what's going on in the Senate, right? Y'all need to understand how this game works. So at every level, we need to get engaged, and they've already, you heard about SB 90, done things to make it harder for us to vote. Listen, we're not new to this game. We're true to this game. So we don't care what obstacles they throw in our way. We need to stay engaged and stay early. Right now, by the numbers, Democrats are at the worst registration levels that they've been in decades. That does not bode well for us. We have a lot of issues going on, but the point is there are lots of ways to engage, and I'm not going to use all of this time to get into that. Please feel free to reach out to me. I am accessible. If you want to schedule a time to talk, you don't know where to start, the phone number for my office is 850-717-5108. If you're on Instagram, IG, hit me up with a direct message. I answer those directly. It's just Dottie Joseph, D-O-T-I-E Joseph. And whether you're thinking about running for office, whether you want to volunteer, whether you want to intern, whether there's an issue that you're passionate about, we can plug you into somebody who's doing something. And if not, we'll find something that you can do. But there is a lot to do. The work is many, but the workers are few.
Thank you. Amen. The PK came out in a big way. Now, Senator Pizzo, I think you were waiting to make a comment. Tough act to follow these ladies on this end. You know, I don't know whose idea it was to put them down here by me to give me the fuel me.
Indeed. So if Pastor and I are going to sit here and we were to open the good book and read Genesis 1, verse 27, or John 3:16, this church would be completely and directly against that which Representative Joseph, myself, and Representative Chambliss advocate for in Tallahassee. And therefore, it creates sort of a divide, to Representative Joseph's point. I'm sure of two things, that there is a God, and I'm not him. And everything else that follows is, as Representative Joseph said, to man and woman's free will. But what we must do, what must happen, I have the great fortune and great luxury of not hating anyone, which means I don't give up on anyone. 30% of the people that are in state prison right now will be released every year. I write about 20 to 30 handwritten letters to people in prison, some of which I put there, because I don't want to give up on them. I don't want to give up on any agency. I don't want to give up on any individual, because I realize that sometimes a good meal, a hug, better street lighting, vocation, apprenticeships, education, exposure can make a huge difference in someone's life, and that's what we need to push for. Ms. Foster, your gut instinct about politicians is for the most part right. The problem and the resistance that I push back against a lot are people that are lazy, disingenuous. When I'm trying to save young black male lives, I get pushback from older black men. The question's never asked, is a community issue to be solved only by the community itself, or do you want buy-in from everybody else? Sometimes when you just march and you talk within a community, that's just cheerleading. That's not moving the needle.
Say that again.
When you're just within a community and you don't go outside, you want my white kids to care about Liberty City. And they do, because that's the way they were raised. You want the people that write the checks and make the laws, the majority of which in Florida don't know anything about Liberty City, or Little Haiti, or Overtown, or Brown Sub. Nothing. But we need them on board, otherwise it's cheerleading. My mom told me, when you go to run for office, don't you dare go to a black church and talk about criminal justice reform. Go to the white church and talk about criminal justice reform. Talk about opportunity, talk about equity, talk about those things. Your suspicions are absolutely right. I was completely frustrated when I was in that office that we were only seeing 9%. I heard the other day that and I was telling Deputy Chief, that the arrest rate right now for Miami-Dade County Police in the Southern District areas is 7% on shootings, 15% in the North Side. For every 100 black boys and girls that get shot or killed, the overwhelming majority, there's no arrest. To say nothing of once an arrest is made, trying to successfully prosecute that case. I happen to believe in a stubborn fashion that each one of those kids is worth as much as my kid. That the mothers and fathers who lost those kids have the same pain that you see across national media, whether it's Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Virginia Tech, Charlottesville, right? But there's no marches or rallies for them outside of our communities. There's no march to DC for the kids who get killed in Overtown. And there's no arrests, and there's no closure. How many of you have ever done a ride-along? You know what that is? On Friday nights, 11 p.m. to 8 a.m., you can go on the shift with the cops, sit in the patrol car. Do it. Have that conversation. I think the guys in the academy should start picking up kids and bringing them to school in the morning, and then the afternoon shift should drop them off. So the academy guy becomes officer friendly. So when a kid goes from 8 to 15, he has somebody he trusts and he can talk to. That's what we start needing to do. I had a bill that I filed last year on implicit bias training before George Floyd was killed. And people rolled their eyes like it wasn't necessary. I called a bluff and I asked law enforcement and invited them into a discussion about actually drafting a bill. I had a bill that went a lot, and I think Representative Joseph knows this, SB 1970. It went a lot further than, and I mean this respectfully, what everybody settled for this session. Mine was really in depth. It spoke to de-escalation. Pastor said he was concerned that Chauvin wasn't going to be convicted. When I see an officer with his hands in his pockets, I know he's getting convicted. But there's mental health training that a lot of officers don't want to talk about. You know, my chief of staff, Maggie, and I have been over too many dead bodies, especially of kids. And it wears on you. It wears on you when a kid in a certain neighborhood hears a pop and gets down on the ground, and the kids on the east side of my district hear a pop and look up for a firework in the sky. It's a different world, and it's 2 miles away from each other. 2 miles away from each other. So I'm going to be really honest. A lot of what holds progress down and holds back progress are a lot of politicians trying to sell you the continuing fear of it's their fault, it's this fault, it's that, re-elect me. I do not think the way to solve crime or the underlying issues or the solution is to make your kids go home by a certain time in a curfew and hide inside. That's giving up. So you are right, and you should question each and every single person running for office, holding office, or what they're going to do. And here's the biggest takeaway. We can all nod our heads, and I appreciate everyone agreeing or engaging in this, but there's 30 people in this church, and there's only one teenager here. That was different when I was that age. Half on Sundays were kids. I know you all agree. That's why you're here. You're engaged. We need to reach the kids.
Thank you. All right, so as we, I see my countdown clock at 3 minutes, so we're going to have to move down the line and have everyone say goodbye and have a parting word, comment, if you will, and don't worry, Pastor, it's your house, so if you want to go over, I'm going to let you do what you want, okay? Okay, so, all right, so Deputy Chief Belcher, what parting words do you have for us as we move forward? What should we do next in your area?
Well, I'd just like to say this. You know, this is something that's always needed, but we never have enough time to put the real message out there as far as a lot of the things that we spoke about here on the panel. Some of the things we haven't had the opportunity to talk about that needs to be heard and stuff. So this is real appreciative. You know, I tell people to make sure that we continue to chip away at it. You know, continue to go out in our communities, whether it's the police, whether it's the politicians, whether it's the pastor of the church, because church is needed. When you asked about is church, where is the church at? Yeah, they're needed. We need to be out there. We need to be walking those neighborhoods, making contact with those kids, because yes, those kids have disappeared from churches. They have disappeared from looking at the Bible, listening to music, good gospel music, to help them build their repertoire as far as moving forward positively in life and stuff, and to have something good on their heart and on their mind and stuff. I always tell people I've been going to church since I was a very young boy, And if I didn't get a ride, if my parents didn't take me, I would find a way to get there, whether I had to jump on a church bus or not. But the thing is that we have to keep pushing that forward. We have to keep pushing the people that we work around, work with, and the people that we live around and live with. We have to keep pushing them, whether we're in uniform or not. And I say just continue to go out in your communities and do the positive things, spread the positive messages, and you just keep chipping away at it and pushing it upon each one of them until they're tired of it. And sometimes I give words in roll call, and I say, look, we're gonna have to keep doing these certain things. And you'll have somebody that say, oh man, you browbeating us. I said, well, I'm gonna keep going because I know it's 4 or 5 of you all in here have not received the message yet, nor do you understand it. And those are the ones that we need to make sure we pay attention to when we're out on the streets. These video cameras have exposed so much, and we see it every day now as something comes across the news. We get a new video of something that took place that was wrong, whether it was on the officer's part or the individual part that the officer was dealing with. And one thing I tell people, and I tell the officers, you make sure you play those cameras, you turn them on when you go to an incident, because we get so many complaints back on the officers about some of the bad things, or the officers was abusive, or he talked badly to me. When I go back and look at those videos, you would be amazed of how big of a lie that probably was on the officer, and just the actions that some of the people or the individuals are doing on camera. And then they come in and make a complaint on the officer. But not saying that all the officers are saints, because they're not. They do things, they say things that we have to put them in check and bring them back on the path to do the right thing. So I tell everybody to make sure that we all continue to do this. We all continue to chip in our communities, whether it's our communities or other communities, because we all need to say something when we see something. But we have to be careful now, because we have our young people, not just the young people, pulling out guns like they're water pistols now. And I mean, they shoot down anything. I tell you, if you don't get in no road rage, it's not worth it. If the person blow by you, I'm a police officer. When I'm going home, car speed by me flying, they cut me off, I'm on my way home. Good, I wish them good luck, especially the guys on the motorcycle. I wish them good luck. Especially if it was on a hot day of 90 degrees, because if they hit that pavement, I don't want to have nothing to do with that, but I feel for them because of the pain. So the thing is that I tell people, don't get into arguments with individuals, because it's a waste of time, and it might cost you your life. Or it might cost that person their life, it might cost you jail time. So just make sure we go out there and continue doing what we're doing. Keep pushing this message, and keep pushing the efforts in our families, to the people that's friends of our families, to the people that we work with, so we can try to build a better community and a better relationship with each other as far as officers and the citizens.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Chambliss.
Thank you. What do you do when you hear the cry of a black woman? That's why today and many other times were so powerful and impactful for me, because I was sitting there and I was listening to the cry of a mother that sounded like my own. The question is, what do you do? And for too many times, us in the community, black men, we sit there and we let her cry and just let her keep crying. We let her take all the heat, we let her stand in the forefront, and we just, I don't know if it's whether we've been beaten down so much mentally, but we don't go and stand by her side, if not stand in front of her. And that's why this is important. That's why this moment is important. That's why the testimony of the mother was so important, because we have to have a sense of urgency to act now. We have to become impatient with the system. We have to demand results, not beg for them, not sit there and ask for them like it's something, some special privilege or some special piece of candy and we are a child. We have to engage the institution that is our institution to lead. Fearlessly, unapologetically, that's what we have to do. We know what the answer is. I mean, nobody can sit here and say we don't know what we need to do. The question is, do we have the will to do it? The question that you ask your leader is, politician, do you have the political will to do it? Because if you have the pen, you can write it the way that it needs to be written. Unfortunately, we have leaders in this community that don't have the political will to do what is necessary. They hear the cry of a black woman and they turn the other way. That has to end in our community. We're the only people in our community. Love you, Jason. We're the only people in our community that can hold ourselves accountable. It has to be us. I would go so far as to say there was a time where from the pulpit, they held us accountable because they spoke truth to power to us first. We have to be fearless. We have to be impatient with the results. And again, remember, this is our institution. This is not some institution that someone else has. We're in the United States of America. It's our government. We run it. So we need to get off the sideline and get off of the back pew, if you will, and we need to lead by example. Thank you.
Senator Pizzo. I think we have some questions online. Who's going to ask the questions? Are we going to do? Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. 1 second. I want to make sure. No, he's coming, but I want to make sure there might be a question for him. So we're going to get that ready. Go ahead, Senator Pizzo.
One thing I said when I was actually running for this seat was the following, that sometimes people that look like you, sound like you, make you feel familiar and warm, and there's something sort of an emotional connection, and it feels almost like family sometimes. But we realize that the first group that we take advantage, sometimes the most, is family, that we lean on them, that we take advantage of their time and their resources and their love for us, and it allows people to get away with a lot and not do a lot. So we must be, and you must be, as demanding of everyone equally, and the more local, the better. Ms. Foster threw an amazing event the other day. She didn't get enough credit for it, not even remotely. That was her event. And it morphed into some other things, and I know that there was a lot of discussions. But one thing I think she did take away from that was I was the least willing to go up on the stage. Because, and it goes back to the bullseye that I told you about and state action. And people are like, come up, come up, come up, come up. And I'm like, I'm good here. I'm absorbing. I got 2 ears and one mouth, like my grandmother used to say, listen twice as much. And I'm thinking, how can I draft something? How can I write something? No disrespect to everybody else that was there. It's good that they showed the respect. If they weren't there, we'd call them out for not being there. But no offense to the mayor of the city of Miami, he doesn't make laws. County commissioners pass ordinances, but they're not moving the needle. Stop kissing butt. Who's going to move the needle and change the quality of your life? It's actually a guy who's the president of the Senate who lives in a town called Trilby that you've never heard of that I'm going to go see in a few days to give him, because he wants to know, what is my agenda? What do I want to get done? That farmer, egg farmer up in Trilby, Florida, will have more to do with the safety of our community than anybody else trying to get in front of Local 10, WSVN, or CBS 4. Realize that. And you want to talk about a black woman crying, go see those men and women outside of our community. I know it's not comfortable, but again, I don't owe anybody anything, but nobody owes me anything. So realize who has the power and who has the ability to improve the quality of that child's life. It's very often not the person down the street who you clap it up with, who looks like you, sounds like you, and comes from the same place, because there's a little bit of a jealousy thing there. That there's only a fixed amount of space, enough food to go around just for the few. You're a threat. You'll be a threat, Crystal. The louder your voice gets, the more effective your voice gets, you'll be a threat. You're invading in on someone else's space. Nobody owns the space of the safety and the lives of children. Let me be very clear. Nobody owns that space. I'm a white guy from New Jersey. You're a black woman from Miami. We love our families, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, grandparents, aunts, uncles, kids, the same. Pastor and I will not agree on the scripture sometimes. But you want to know something? I bet you we care about people just as much. While he quietly laid in the streets in Portland, I quietly walked in a crowd in Tallahassee during a protest. Because guess what? If they were going to be arresting me, they'd be like, yo, I'm an attorney. and I work in that big building with a dome across the street. That would have been fun. But what can we agree on? How can you and I get 15 and 16-year-olds in here? How can you convey to them, let's not worry about the stuff that makes the news? My Catholic church that I belong to just told me yesterday that based on my political beliefs, I'm not allowed to take communion anymore. I'm not allowed to take the body of Christ.
I said we don't want nobody in here to get excommunicated. Okay.
Right. Well, I'm sitting next to the
and
pastor.
You didn't even tell me that it's already happened.
Eric, if lightning strikes, I'm next to this guy, so I like my chances. But I'm going to pass it along. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I appreciate, Senator Pizzo, your candor about the march that Crystal put on the other day. There were many folk that spoke that were less qualified and less talented and less worthy, far less worthy to speak there than you. That had no problem taking the mic, and it just goes to show that people who want to see Ms. Foster allow her voice to be used for good, are willing to take that back seat to allow her to do what God apparently has chosen her to do, while others seek to either minimize the effect of her voice or capitalize on the effect of her voice, in many cases just to silence her voice. She and I talk very often, and this is something that, as anyone out here that wants to be an activist, and again, I'm taking some liberties as the moderator here, but been blessed to be able to talk with Crystal a lot about her forced upon role as an activist. She didn't choose one day, to, as Representative Chambliss said, fell in love with politics. She didn't choose to fall in love with activism. She had a tragedy, and she hasn't really given a lot of detail on this, but to imagine having no children and then suddenly being in a position to raise 6 children, and she says help, but there is help with that, but there's a number of them that are in her house every day that call her mom, that she has become the mother of, and to be in that position that has had to happen. And then not only did you take these kids in and begin to help raise them, but you also still have to deal with the grief and the fighting and trying to get justice for your brother, which is another reason why Mr. Jones is here. And I hope that as he wraps up and talks a little bit more, that he'll share just a piece of hope in that case. Not going to tell you give details or what have you, but we want, we're here with the forum. We came here today after looking at the scene and doing some other things involving that case. I'm just a driver, showing him around the town and where these places are. But this is a powerful moment. And like I said, I appreciate you for bringing that up, Senator Pizzo. Because, like I said, I know I said, hey, you need to go up there and speak. And you're not going to speak? And you're like, nope, I'm good. And hung back in the back and almost didn't notice you back in the back. But that's admirable, because there's folks that just want to jump in front of the mic and camera. And, some of those folks, they spoke and they left out of there with the breakneck speed. It was, they gave their speech and they were gone so fast, you just knew, why did you even bother to come? Those folks that were there for the purpose that this march was for were there and stayed without speaking or without being on the program. And that's a big difference. With that said, I'm gonna get off of that soapbox, and but I had to share that. Who's next? Oh, we're going to go to the questions now?
Yes,
Right?
please.
Okay.
We have a couple of questions that came from the websites, our Instagram, Facebook, and some of our, one of the main questions that came across is, how can we avoid a post-crisis complacency? I know we've had many subjects that we've presented, and some of the questions were asked about mental health, the fact that we treat it as a crime, and what is recommended when we call for help for someone with mental health problems. We also talked about abuse, and also we know that we disagree on the facts of abortion. When it comes onto a church, we disagree with some of these topics. But in all of our disagreements and agreements, what is it that we do, or how can we avoid a post-crisis complacency? This discussion started from last year, Juneteenth, for our town hall discussion. What do we need to be doing now? How can we re-engage ourselves at this point when the dust has kind of passed? So how do we avoid this? And if anybody can address those topics from our viewers on the mental health, the abuse in our community, please do so.
I'll take a stab at it. All right. So there's a lot more that unites us than what divides us. So let's start there. And the things that you care about, identify any of those things. And as far as complacency, the easy antidote to complacency is action. You start with what you want to achieve, or a couple of steps. And sometimes you don't know where to start. So let's assume you don't know where to start. A really basic thing is to register to vote. Real basic. You don't even have to make any decisions at that point. Just register to vote. Make sure you're registered. That's step number one. Step number two, I like to work backwards. So what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that that's giving you a fire in your belly, right? If you want to see what's going on with her organization and how you can participate, guess what? Reach out. Hey, I like what you're talking. I want to stand with you. What can I do? If you're not sure, reach out to my office. What can I do? Whatever that issue is, assuming there's an issue that drives you, right? What are some things you can do to come up with solutions to that thing? And work backwards. So other than the civic engagement, so the civic engagement, we talk about registering to vote, but do you know a public servant? I don't like to use the word politician, but I guess it's almost the same thing, but they're not. Do you know a public servant that espouses what you believe in? Find out how you can support them to get either reelected or elected if they're going up for the first time. You know, when you have somebody who understands your issues at the table, there's a lot less explaining you need to do. And they're automatically fighting for your issues instead of you begging them to do it. That's the only reason I'm sitting here today, is because I got tired of begging people to do the right thing. Amen. Right? So how do you support the people who are getting you closer to what you need? I realized really quickly in Tallahassee, when I found all these amazing bills, equal pay for equal work for women. Who can be against that? The Republicans in charge right now are. And that's crazy to me. Right. Expanding Medicaid, we leave billions of dollars on the table. And I realized real fast and in a hurry that in order to get these important things that will have a tangible impact on people's lives really right now, the bill that the senator referred to, we had so many other bills that were filed to address criminal justice reform that were not heard, would not be considered. So then you engage in the game of politics to try to figure out, well, what can we get across the finish line? Rather than walk away with nothing, right? But we could get so much more if we had people who understood our issues there. Like, I hate to make it about that, but it's the truth. And they want you to not get engaged. There's a reason why the Russian trolls are trying to convince you that your vote doesn't matter. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why they're trying to dissuade you from exercising your right to vote. Because it does matter. Everything that you care about, think about anything. And I guarantee you there's at least one law that directly impacts that. At least one. So if you have the right people at the table, not just the ones who show up because they want to say something, but the ones who are there to do the work and follow through and execute to help you meet that need, it makes a difference. So that's a really basic level thing of what you can do. You don't have to agree on everything. There's hardly anybody that you can agree on everything with, and that's okay. But I will tell you this, hypocrisy is seen, it's felt, and it repels. So if you are not the salt of the earth that you are called to be, if you are not that light, darkness will come in. And the kids will not want to be around that hypocrisy. Because they hear you talking about pulling their pants up, but you don't care about these people dying. Oh, we're not going to get engaged in that. Okay, I'm going to exit stage left. And you're going to keep losing them that way if you don't get engaged.
Amen.
If I could jump on the mental health piece that was mentioned.
Yes.
Because it's really important that we don't get comfortable. And too many times in our community, like, our kids have grown up with similar amounts of shootings that some third world countries go through, right? And so it's absolutely PTSD. We need to call it what it is because our kids think it's normal. My kid thinks that this is how it goes, that this is where we live in, and so their aptitude or their motivation to try to be the change or to try to seek change goes away because they've gone so long without there being any change. And so we need to make sure that we're identifying it for what it is, that we're seeking help. Like literally, like kids in Florida City, they all need counseling. To have, not just the pandemic, I'm talking about before the pandemic. To have seen classmates that they've grown up with, people who they played basketball with, they played on Pop Warner football teams with, get mowed down consistently to where they're waking up asking, hey God, am I next today? Is this my day? I know that it's coming. Is this my day? Because if it ain't, I'm gonna wild out as much as I can because I know everybody, all of us was on the team, like half the team is gone. That is PTSD, and we have to make sure that we're letting them know that we're instilling into the next generation that it is not normal, that we do need to address it because there's a way that it needs to be addressed, because if we don't give it an outlet, it will create an outlet. So no, we can't get comfortable. We have to be impatient, but also with our next generation, we have to make sure that they understand that this is not normal, which means that it needs an abnormal solution. We have to think outside the box, but we have to act with a sense of urgency to save our young people, because literally, many of them are living in the middle of a war zone.
Thank you. Senator Pizzo.
So one of the things we're going to be working on, we're going to convene a group of child psychologists. And I don't mean any disrespect to any of you that are here or the people that do show up from time to time. But a lot of the time, the people that show up to press conferences, it's what Maggie calls adulting. We actually want to anonymously survey the kids that are either in the DJJ system right now. And I did this when I was a prosecutor. Sometimes I would just swing by and buy lunch, tell a couple of guys on the football team that they weren't going to practice because I wanted to have a conversation, because I tracked the social media all the time. Every time I had a shooting, it was precipitated by something on social media. To try to explain to other legislators in Tallahassee the difference between 12th Court and 13th Ave, but it's just like 150 feet. Yeah, I get it. Or Zone 4, different zones in the gardens, and try to explain this, and TBG and Zopan. We need to hear from kids, okay? And the reason why we need to hear from kids is because that's the actual data. That's the reason. That's the reason why they're picking something up or they're engaging in something. I'll say it ad nauseum. Now people are starting to pay attention. More kids die 18 and under in Miami-Dade County every year, 18 and under, than were killed at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. But there's no special session. There was no $400 million. There was no legislation changing, because it's 1 and 2 at a time. The other common denominator of every mass shooting that you ever see is the perpetrator is always caught, captured, killed, whatever. The overwhelming majority of cases in Miami-Dade County, there's no closure. When moms get together and you ask them to raise their hand, how many arrests have been made in the killing of their son or daughter, maybe 1 or 2 hands go up. That's it. That's a difference. They don't love the kids any less, but we got to hear from the kids. We got to know the why. And I mean no disrespect, but none of the people that show up to these things have the answers. Sometimes, even for my kids who have everything, I got to ask their friends to ask them what's bothering them. And that's okay to say we don't know. The smartest people I know will say, I don't know, but I'll find out. But they don't give up on it. They don't give up on it. And that's really where we are. But again, I'm going to ask the question again, and something to think about, not to give a reflexive answer. Do the solutions to a lot of the issues that we have, regardless of what community it's in, does the solution always come internally? Or does it require, or do you want participation from the outside? There are certain things that you just want left alone. You'll handle this, we'll handle this, we'll take care of this. And sometimes you just can't. That question has to be asked. It's so critically important.
Definitely. The question has come that folks want to know, hear from you, Terence. What is your, what's the story? And I'm not sure that's how it was worded. What's the story? Your visit here to Miami, not a vacation. What's going on? And I know that what the answer to that is, and that has to deal with the Foster case. And so, can you answer that with what you can tell? Because again, while the state attorney's investigation is closed, your investigation is open.
That's correct. So I landed in Miami Wednesday morning. I haven't seen the ocean. I went to a few restaurants that Eric has taken me to, but I pretty much worked.
I'm gonna make sure that I eat good, so that means he got to eat good.
Yeah. So I've seen some fantastic restaurants. But I'm not here for vacation. I flew in from Philadelphia. I was blessed to attend a march that another fellow New Jerseyan, the Senator Pizzo, was there. It was raining. I call it the rain of justice. And the best time that I had during this march against gun violence was I got to walk with the University of Miami football players. So that was the highlight pretty much, because it's a sad event of these 6 kids that were killed, black on black crime. I told you I've seen violence my whole life. Now it's different though. When I was younger, it was my best friend, Jimmy Thomas, got killed with gun violence over an argument. Now, I do these investigations across the country, by the way. So Miami isn't the only place that's like this, but across the country in Baltimore and Philadelphia and Chicago, now this is what it is. It's not a word said. Social media, text messages, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. They're killing kids across the country, many black and brown on black and brown, over this. Greatest invention in the world and the worst invention. At my home, with my 3 kids, when we eat dinner, you put that away. I've watched kids. I trained my daughter in track and field, and they would do this, and ha, 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 and they're sitting right next to each other. So all the kids that I trained, and the over 50 kids, when I trained my daughter by herself, I would go into the hood and take inner city kids, and I've gotten over 50 kids Division I scholarships for football on a volunteer basis. Just because I was training my daughter and I didn't want her to train alone. And of course, you know, she liked boys, so so it was a blessing. And a bunch of those kids are playing in the NFL now. So I say that to say that I came here to do an investigation. I was asked by the president of the National Black Police Association that he had talked to a guy by the name of Eric Pettis. And Eric had asked, to find someone that can do an independent investigation, and that's been very, very effective. And that national president recommended me, retired, former police officer, highly decorated. I made more arrests than, a small group of us made more arrests than 99% of the officers out of the 7,000 member force in Philadelphia. Not saying that to brag or boast, because I'm humbly doing God's work. So when I had a chance to talk to Crystal Foster, and had a chance to talk to her mother and her sister, the one thing that I promised them is that I would get them justice, that I would do a fair, impartial, and objective investigation like the police department should have done, like the state attorney should have done. And I can't really tell you the results of my investigation. I'm coming back on July 15th, on the unfortunate anniversary of his death, and I'm gonna hold a national news conference to give everybody the results. But what I will say to you is I'm very troubled. I'm very troubled that the investigation by 5 different investigative units was a sham, was a joke, wasn't serious, was a cover-up. And I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm giving you facts. I'm giving you facts. Unfortunately, I'm going to give you this before I go. So I do these investigations across the country, and I start with New Jersey, where me and Senator Pizzo are from. 21 counties in New Jersey, 0 officers held accountable in a 5-year period for excessive force. So when they talk about a police state, which Florida is a police state, and when we say police state, we meaning protect police officers at all costs, especially if they kill black or brown. It's just, it kind of breaks my heart. But what I'm saying to you is what's going on in Florida is no different than what's going on in most of the states. You have state attorneys and attorney generals and prosecutors that could care less. As long as they're killing each other, as long as we could bring up their background, that they've been locked up before and things of that nature, no one's going to care. And like the senator said, it doesn't matter how many times you march and all that kind of stuff, because the people that are marching don't have the power to clear the officer. I'm going to leave you with this. The state attorney in Edward Foster's case did an investigation, and you all should be outraged, everybody that can hear my voice, everybody that can see me, because she took 5 years and 2 months to complete her investigation. And I'm going to tell you why that's important. I'm giving you facts again. 3 lawyers on a Zoom with the mother and the sister who are here, and Crystal and Eric and me in New Jersey, doing a Zoom. The 3 lawyers asked me, why did she wait 5 years and 2 months? I said, I already got the answer. Because I had a case in Delaware that they did the same thing. A guy named Jeremy McDowell, paralyzed, quadriplegic, in a wheelchair, shot and killed by police. He did not have a gun. Edward Foster did not have a gun. And the reason why she waited 5 years and 2 months, other than first-degree murder, the statute of limitations for every other crime is 5 years. The reason why she waited 5 years and 2 months is because the statute of limitation for anything under first-degree murder is 5 years. That's why she waited that long. In order to clear this officer that had 6 shootings, and it should have been red flags all over the place, that he's a violent officer, and he murdered her brother. And I'm now investigating the other shootings that he had with T-Pain's cousin and all the other people. I will give you my results, national press conference, anniversary for brother's death, July 15th. I'll be flying back in here again. That's it.
And I can't wait for those results because, again, having read the state attorney's closeout memo of that case.
Dragged out of office. She should be dragged out of office.
Which came days after her re-election.
She was
Okay.
elected by you guys. Not maybe you guys, but she was elected by the people.
I initially read the documents, and I forget how many pages. It was probably about 70 pages, I think, 40 to 70. I can't remember, but I've read so much in the case. But my initial read of that closeout memo, I said, this is total nonsense, which is the reason that without having any other evidence at all other than the state attorney's office internal memo that explains why they decided not to prosecute this officer and close the case and ruled it justified. One read through, I don't even think I got past the first 10 pages before I said, flag on the play. This is nonsense. And got on the phone and called Willie Williams Jr., the national chair of the National Black Police Association, and said, I need a retired homicide investigator, somebody that can investigate and is willing to, one, read this thing to see if I'm crazy, and then two, read this thing and be willing to publicly speak on what is in it. And he referred me to Terence Jones. And that, for this case, was the best thing to happen, because I don't know any other way that this would have been able to be brought to light. The more documents that come out, the more I will say, I've told a few people, some in the political arena, when he's done with this investigation, we're gonna have to sit down with some of our legislators, and you all probably be the ones I first call to say, get the rest of your team together, because we need to sit down and show you all of the inconsistencies and the lies and deceit that's in this. And you all need to decide what you're going to do about this person that we have. Okay? And I don't know what who's the boss of the, state attorney. I assume that elected official, it'd be the governor. And while we have the governor that we do have, if we can get the rest of Miami-Dade County who really don't, let me just say, if we get the rest of Miami-Dade County to look at the little bit of evidence that I've seen so far is egregious. This is only the beginning of what he's going to be looking at, okay? But this is going to be a mess, and I'm just putting it out there, forewarning, because of what I have seen, okay? And as I've said today, one thing for certain, there's two types of justice. There's justice from the law, and then there's justice monetarily, okay? This is a case where there needs to be both. And even though the state attorney was complicit in allowing the statute of limitations to run on that officer, statute of limitation hasn't run on her, okay? Qualified immunity or not, there has to be some recourse there, because we have documentation that was signed off on, that closeout memo signed off on by the state attorney's office, and the state attorney's name is on the bottom of it, okay?
Along with 6 other people.
Okay.
From her office.
And so there's not going to be a way to deny this information being exposed. And as I told somebody today, I'm not a member of the family, I'm just me. Which means that no matter what settlement offer or what may happen, trial, what have you, that says you can't disclose, et cetera, I can say whatever I want to say. Okay, and there's not an amount of money that the state attorney that we have could ever pay me to make me not tell what I see. Okay, so I'm muzzled for the next few weeks, out of respect for the investigator here, and I'm
volunteering my time, so I'll be
yeah.
talking, like I said, at this national press conference.
Yeah, so that's what I want to share. Yes, Senator.
I just want to go back to one thing. When Mr. Jones stood up, nobody disagreed with the fact that it was, it's insignificant beefing back and forth on social media and the reaction. But you're going to remember 2.5 years ago, I'm on the Chief Jimmy Brown show at 9 o'clock on a Sunday from Tallahassee, and you're giving me a real hard time, Eric.
Yes, I was.
About a bill that I filed
Yes,
that
sir.
said that police, when they see a minor in possession of a firearm in a place where it's unlawful for them to do so, which is not hunting or target shooting, that I think that police should be able to have contact with that kid before they shoot and kill someone or they get shot. And I had an entire portion of the community come down hard on me, really hard. The Miami Times feature article, an op-ed, was, "My thinking is really, really dangerous." And how many dozens of kids have been killed or shot, and moms and dads have lost their kids because I got a lot of crap for this white former prosecutor wanting to do something as simple as allowing the community and the police to have contact with a teenager who has a firearm shown on social media before they shoot somebody or get killed. But today, nobody disagrees with that. But here's my point. I don't have pride of authorship. I don't care what my hero looks like. When my kid's got to have a surgery or an operation, I don't care where the surgeon's from as long as they're the best at it, right? I don't care what my hero looks like. I don't have pride of authorship. But this is the most dangerous and tragic I told you so ever. And last year, when we successfully got through 2 Senate committees and Representative at the time, 𝐄𝐱𝐩𝐿 Jones, now Senator Jones, was about to present the bill, a Miami-Dade state legislator told him that we're going to have a press conference against you, the NAACP, and everyone's going to come out against you if you go forward with Pizzo's bill. And even my staff member stood up and said, then more kids are going to die because you won't present this bill. That's the hypocrisy that we need to push back against. It's just the irony of hearing it.
Well, I am compelled to respond to the segment on the Chief Jimmy Brown show. In that bill, my contention and issue with that bill is, as a avid shooter, gun collector, who has trained many young men and women how to shoot safely, responsibly, to handle a firearm, who have several of those young people who are now adults that are concealed weapons carriers and avid shooters and hunters and etc. My concern is, and was at that time, that a law that criminalizes parents for children doing children things would be criminalizing the parents was not the way to do it,
And
in
fact,
my opinion.
So the existing law for the past 27 years under Florida Statute 790, actually, when a minor is in possession of a firearm, charges the parent with a third-degree felony. My bill specifically removed the criminal charge against the parents, specifically removed it, and said the court may order family counseling. Specifically removed it.
The other issue I had,
Sure.
and again, if that's what it changed to at that point or what was presented, great. My concern was that was an issue. My other concern was was that when these kids are posting pictures, if I took a child to the to the shooting range. We have often taken pictures, we've done video, and I have adamantly told those children, do not post this because other people won't understand what you're learning here, okay? And they don't need to know that you know how to handle a firearm, etc. But in the chance that one of those kids decided that they wanted to do something and post it, I didn't want that child to have their life upended because they posted a picture. Should they be investigated if they posted it? Perhaps. Should they be talked to? Perhaps. But criminalized? No. We have a county that has a very high proportion of juveniles direct filed as adults as it is. That coming off of the ACLU study that was done that shows the disproportion of blacks and black Hispanics in Miami-Dade County that are arrested, charged at a higher level, charged with higher level crimes, misdemeanors that are moved to felonies, juveniles tried as adults, higher penalties, fees, targeted enforcement. That's all of those things. We have enough of that, in my opinion, that to make photographs part of that was not something that I was willing to do without fixing those other things as well.
But Eric, the life of a child, when I have an 8th grader at Brownsville Middle School with a Glock loaded in the school bathroom that all the other kids can see and have to live by and through, I'm worried about those other kids' lives. I'm not discounting and discrediting.
Right, and again, I agreed with you at that time
Right.
that person had put, that was a crime. He took a gun to school. That's already a crime. We don't need a crime for the picture.
But the police didn't find out till 8:30 that night, so there's nothing they could do about it.
All right, let me jump in here because I see she's
Yeah,
coming up
we
here.
got to wrap up.
I think
Yes,
this is
we
a good
do.
conversation to have subsequent to the forum and look at maybe additional legislation. There were some concerns raised, even with the tough love measures relating to constitutionalism, but we don't need to get into all of those details now. We can continue that,
Thank you.
but I think that that's a good entree for either another
Definitely.
show. to do
And I
that.
would like to definitely say that this has been an excellent panel discussion. We want to thank all our panelists for being here this afternoon. But this kind of preempts us into some other critical conversation. As a matter of fact,
Okay, Kenneth.
August the 20th,
We're gonna
we
wrap
have it
up
flagged
here.
right now
You
for
can stop
addressing
sharing
another
now.
panel discussion
We're gonna
on gun violence.
just
And
wanna
these are some of the
thank
critical issues that we're going to be
everyone
talking
who
about.
stayed
So this
on.
is just the beginning of
And,
more
this was a
critical
powerful
dialogue. So
message.
we are planning to do another segment on gun
panel,
violence. The next
we
one that we
talk
have
about
scheduled in November is
civil
going to be
rights,
dealing on mental health.
the justice
And we
system,
have another one scheduled
the
in
role of the
January that's
church,
going to be dealing on
which
human
touches
trafficking. So please look out for some
several
more
topics
information as
such
far
as
as us bringing
mental
these
health
critical
problem,
conversations to you
abortion,
as a
and
community,
the
as a
church,
church. And we want to
voters
thank each of you today
registration, and,
for bringing your
we talk
level
about
of
the black people
expertise,
killing each other,
for the
and
critical
corruption
work that
in
you're
the
doing in our
justice
community.
sphere,
Our hearts go
and
out to
the
you,
list
Crystal,
goes on. So we
for the
had
pain that you suffer, and
touches,
for all the
they
mothers
touch
and
on
fathers
a lot
that
of
had
stuff
lost
that
to gun violence.
really important to
our
us.
hearts go out to all
And
of you.
as we go throughout the
I
week,
want to
let
go
us
ahead and do a thank
try
you, but we'll
and
do it
pray
right
because,
immediately
you know,
following
the
our
coming of the Lord
pastor,
is
just
near, and
wrapping
these
up
things
with a
are
vesper
what
thought right now, so we can
have
just
to
bring this whole
expect,
program to a close.
and we know
Thank you
it's
so
gonna
much.
get worse.
Thank you.
We
Well,
just
folks,
let us keep on praying and ask God to help us during
I want to
this
thank
time.
you all for
As the
being
time
here.
goes
This has been a
closer
very
to His
interesting
coming,
discussion.
we know there won't be any form of peace on earth until He comes. So let us pray as we close off
The
AY.
ladies didn't get to do closing remarks.
Heavenly
I don't
Father,
need
we
to give
thank
one,
you so
but
much
there is
for
one
today.
thing that Krista would
We
like
thank
to
you
say.
so much
with
for your
permission,
love.
if it's okay,
We thank you
just
so
let
much
her share
that you have
and
enlightened
close
us
it
with
out. Is that okay?
things
I
that is
believe so.
affecting
Thank you so much.
Black people during this time. We know,
I first
God,
want to
that
say again, thank you, Tabernacle
we
Church,
are living in a
the
serious time,
Chief
oh Lord. And
Belcher
whatever
is
it
there,
is,
right? Pastor
oh God, to
Dottie,
be, will have to
Brother
come to
Floyd,
pass
Chambliss,
until you come. So help us to be
Senator
strong,
Pizzo,
help us to encourage
Senator
each
Jones,
other,
Miss,
and let us
our
not give
powerful
up
Queen,
hope, because we know you're still on our
Representative
side.
Miss Joseph.
Guide us throughout the
We have
rest
to
of
keep
the
in mind,
night, oh Lord, and
I heard moment today.
keep us safe
It's
throughout
not a
the
moment,
week
it's a
until we
movement.
come next Sabbath again. as we worship
This is
you
not a
again
moment, this is a
and for
movement.
another AY program. This
And
is
when
our
we know
prayer. In
better, we
Jesus'
do
name we
better.
pray. Amen.
You know, I am so thankful.
Please
This
have a
is not my
wonderful
brother's
night.
case. I want to make sure everyone
And
knows. It's
thanks
not
for
just about my
joining
brother's case, 'cause
AY.
there's
Please
so many
remember to
cases
join us
that are
next
not on
week
a national level
at
that are
6
going through the
p.m.
same
for
pain.
another
And my
AY
mother and my sister
program.
that just
Have
walked in,
yourself a
who are helping
wonderful
with
week.
6 children. I
Bye.
want to thank them for being the queens that they are. But, you know, again, no one is above the law. There's so many fundamental issues that are going on in our city. And I am so thankful that Senator Pizzo just mentioned it about the march. And I just wanted to be quick to say, yes, it was hijacked. Because that's the problem. We vote these politicians in that just want to be in front of the cameras and in the highlights. But they don't understand that the people that are up here on this panel that's really making a difference don't get the acknowledgement that is needed and don't get the people to stand with them that is needed. So we definitely have to have more conversations and we have to support each other. Because ending in this, you would never understand the pain until it happens to you. You will never understand the pain until it happens to you. And George Floyd's case opened up the avenue for so many people to see the pain because it happened to everyone. So again, thank you all for allowing us to speak on these discussions that are so critical. And when it comes to gun violence, parents, get more involved in your children's life. Get more involved in your children's life because it starts with us. It starts with us. Thank you, Pastor, for inviting us and allowing us into your house. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you understanding. And I pray we could get more pastors, because I don't see the pastors in our community, but I pray we get more pastors like yourself to stand in this fight, because it's going to be a long fight. But if we do it collectively in solidarity, we can do it together.
We stand with you. We stand with you. We support you. We cry with you. Folks, I turn your attention to the Word of God. And in Genesis chapter 4 and verses 10, there is a word there that speaks to each and every one of us. Cain killed his brother Abel. And here is what God said. God said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's innocent blood is crying out to me from the ground," and it adds, "for justice." His brother's blood cries out from the ground. The moments that we watched on television, on social media, whatever medium we chose, we saw that day the cries of our children. I've gone to many prisons in Canada and the United States. One in particular spoke to me in the state of Oregon. They were incarcerated there, children as young as 8 years old. 8 to 24. Now, they didn't steal cookies, mind you. But what resonated with me is the fact that our children as young as 8 years old have to spend, for some of them, the rest of their years behind bars. They're transitioned at the age of 24 into an adult facility where some will spend the rest of their years. If that does not impact us, then I don't know what will. We have seen our children die with knees on their necks. We have watched them gunned down. We have stood by their graves. What more do we need to see to cause us to actually begin to act? This is not a one-moment thing. This is a battle that we will fight till Christ returns. As a church, if we just sit idly by without saying a word, how in the world can we fulfill the mandate that Christ has ordained for our lives? We are called for this purpose and in this time. That's why we're born in this era. When I stood on those lines when I stood, in fact, having a megaphone, screaming out for justice, crying out the names of those who have died. Trayvon Martin, who's right here, and watched the effect of the church sitting idly by. I weep. As I stood on those lines, marching for weeks on end, I realized one thing. I was an old head. You may not understand the colloquial term I just used. In other words, I was an old guy. The ones who stood at those lines marching were all young people. In fact, as I held a megaphone in one of those marches, they came and they said to me, "You don't have to worry. We'll protect you." In fact, they had a device that they learned, I think, from Taiwan. As they would shoot the tear gas, they had a device, and I was wondering what the pylons were all about. It's to take the tear gas and to launch it back. They said, "You just have to keep with the crowd. Keep talking and allow for us to protect you." They didn't know my name. But it shows the heart of what you said, Senator Pizzo, that it's about young people. They're the ones wanting to see a difference in us. They're watching to see what we're going to do. Are we going to allow for the cries of the blood of our children to go unheard? Or are we going to take up and begin to do something about it? Not only that, at the end, you know what some of them came up to me and they wanted to know? Who do you represent? Who do you represent? Are you with, and they named out all the names, I'm not going to name them. I said, "No, I'm from the church." They said, "The church? Do they even care?" And I said, "Because I'm here, we care." And some of them wanted to know what church I belonged to, because it was the first time they heard someone from the church actually cared to actually be there with them. I say all of this just to come back to say, people want to know that we care. You asked the question there, State Representative, when you said they don't care. The church cares. We care. And we need to take a stand and make a difference. I thank each and every one of you for sitting on this panel, for taking your time, these hours that we have spent discussing these issues, because it shows that we care. I urge you, and this may be off the whole side, but Deputy Chief, as you go back, please tell those in the office, when they're hiring individuals, ensure they belong to part of the community. It makes a difference. I will police different. I will treat those different if I know their names. If I'm just down the street from them. It doesn't have to be everyone in the department. But your brother would not have to die if the police knew who he was. Those with mental illness, if they're able to say, "That's Sister so-and-so, that's Miss so-and-so's kid, who always has an issue, who always suffers, who always goes off the rocker at times," they will treat them differently. And I pray for our community. We will be activists. We will continue to stand with those who have lost. We will continue to support mothers that have children that have been killed at the hands of those who didn't care. We will continue to be a voice for the voiceless. And as long as God will give me breath in my body, I vow that I will continue to be a voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. And I pray each and every one of us, and those watching online, those young people online who could not be here because our church is closed, so they could not be here, but you're watching online, I tell you, make a difference. Vote. Go out there and continue to study, get that education that you need, and continue to serve your community. Come back and be a politician that's going to make a difference. Be that mayor, be that senator, be that advocate for those who are voiceless. And in the end, we will see a difference. We will make a difference, and our communities will be better because of it. On that note, Sister Ned, let's have a word of prayer to close out this thing. Is that all right? Yes. Father in heaven, Lord, we're just so thankful today for all that we have heard, what we have gone through, what we have experienced. Lord, we are thankful for the experiences, even though some of them have been very difficult. We ask, oh God, that as investigations occur, as voices are heard throughout this state and others, that a difference will be said and done throughout this land. And in the end, oh God, we will hear the call of justice, and we will rejoice together and celebrate together because you have ordained it. So we thank you and we love you. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.